Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to another round of entertaining, exciting racing action in the one and only SimRacing International Thursday GT3 Championship, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. That's right, the story of Season 11 continues, and after an incredible season opener at the Sachsenring only last time out a week ago in Germany, well, we're here today in the US of A. But to give it its full introduction, of course, we're at none other than Daytona! Well, if I haven't burst a few eardrums with that introduction, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what I've done, but of course that is a terrible rendition of Takanobu Mitsuoshi's Let's Fly Away theme from the Daytona USA arcade game, which came out all the way back in the back end of the 1990s. And well, of course, we can't quite play it here live on the broadcast because otherwise copyright would strike us, but we can do a very poor impersonation of it. And I do apologise in advance there if that's one of the worst interpretations you've ever heard of it. But still, with our drivers getting set today, we are indeed here at the Daytona International Speedway. Located in the US state of Florida and spanning the best part of 3.56 miles. This is a roval like no other, where it marries together the best part of 90% of what is the oval out, the tri-oval, which sees NASCAR make its way to its very tarmac on an annual basis, and it also marries together a very tricky infield section, whereby the infield section is dominated by hairpins and also some rapid-fire direction change sweepers. What it means is for our drivers, it's going to be a round where they need to be very smart with the draft, and otherwise, if you're not, you may find yourself bottoming out with regards to top-end speed before your drivers are able to slipstream their way past you. However, it's not just about the infield section or the oval. We also have, of course, the rather tenacious bus stop chicane that's recently gone through another revision on both the simulator and in real life, and indeed now the bus stop chicane really is a bit of a stoppage to the racing as our drivers make the way down the back straight and the flat, only to find themselves there having to quickly do the left-right, right-left combination and then make the way back onto the final section of the lap. And for all that and more, this is definitely going to be a feeling of a bit of a first time out today. Indeed, it's going to be a return to the old, because this is also a sprint race round for our second round of the championship, and you are tuning in to none other than the Split A broadcast, as we'll be seeing our elite and pro drivers take on the first 2:30-minute race round of the season. But where are my manners? Allow me to welcome you to this live broadcasting circuit side as you tune in tonight on the one only place you can catch all this racing action, and that of course is on YouTube, and that's at youtube.com and search for SimRacing International or SRI, and you can be joining many of the likes there in the YouTube chat, including none other than Jordan B, who's here cheering on Milton Tomlinson-Dennis. We also do say hello there to Matt Watkins, who says let's go Vulcan Motorsport boys. We also do say hello to Laura Jane there, who's laughing. I presume that's at my rendition of the Let's Go Away theme. And also we say hello there to my guy Si, who says I'm so glad I experienced that, thank you Paul. Doesn't matter what happens in the race now. So I think that's made some of our drivers' spirits quite high. Indeed, it may have made some of your spirits high as well at home, ladies and gentlemen. And well, I better get back to my day job. But speaking of which, in the commentary booth you have myself. My name is Paul Walsh, and I'll be bringing you all your racing action over the course of tonight and the entirety of the season from Split A. And in parallel to this, of course, you do have the Split B broadcast, which is focused on our lower split drivers. But by the fact they're a lower split does not mean they're any lower class in terms of their racing. And that'll be none other than Premier and Evo. And that broadcast, of course, is in the very capable hands of none other than both Chaz Draycott and Darren Thacker, as they'll be covering all your live racing action from Split B over the entirety of the season. So whichever way you go, you've got two broadcasts you can catch, and you've got the best part of 120 drivers looking to go for gold week in, week out, and therefore you're absolutely spoiled rotten for entertainment, and we do love to spoil you here at SimRacing International. As we make our way into today, of course, well, there's only one thing we need to do, and that is set the scene then after our season opener. So let's start off by recapping the calendar, and what a calendar we do have. Because as we take a look to our calendar then and leave the circuit for a brief moment, last time out it was our feature race opener, 60 minutes of racing action at the Sachsenring. And there we saw the very tight and tricky German circuit, which is a regular host to GT3 machinery in the form of the Deutsche Torch Markt, none other than being what is DTM. Well, we got to see there what was some surprises, perhaps none more so than the elite class, with Tseard Ploeg surprising himself with the amount of fuel saving he was to be able to achieve, and he was able to overcut all of his rivals in the run of strategy to victory. Meanwhile, in the pro class, it was a little bit of a different story, whereby it was a very straightforward start to the season for Reece Saunders, who led the way up front, and he converted that pole lap to victory. Meanwhile, it was the battle for second on the rest of the podium, with Liam Fraser and Kyle Roy enjoying a very intense battle, and it was just Fraser who managed to pit Roy to the post in the battle of the two V8 machines, the Mercedes versus the Corvette. But will their rivalry continue today? And indeed, will we see some new names take to the top? Well, that's what we'll see here on the 15th of January as we make our way to the Daytona road course. It's sunny skies once again. I do believe it's quite the scorcher at the circuit for our two 30-minute sprint races. So do keep in mind these races are identical, and well, we'll tell you a little bit more about them when we do make our way back to circuit side. But this is one of 4 sprint race rounds for the season, of which we have plenty more of them later on in the calendar, including in rounds 4, 7 and 9, that being at Miami and also Bathurst and Mazzano. But we also do have an absolute eclectic mix of circuits which we'll be heading to, and next up of course will be the International Algarve circuit, also known as the Portimao circuit, and that'll be in round number 3 in a week's time on the 22nd of January. But we have got a long way to go, and as we make our way into this second round, well, let's talk a little bit about our host circuit for today. And here's of course none other than the Daytona International Speedway's road course. Now located near the city of Daytona Beach in the Volusia County of the US state of Florida. 3.56 miles, we said that earlier, but if you prefer kilometres, it's 5.72 kilometres for those of you who prefer the metric system. Corner-wise, there are 12 corners around here. And what we can see, and a big thank you to iRacing.com, not just their brilliant simulator, but the track maps that come with it, what we can see is this is definitely one of those circuits right now which really brings the concept of a roval fully to life. There are multiple venues across the US of A, whether it be a Charlotte Motor Speedway or alternatively Homestead Miami that have rovals, but this arguably is the ultimate roval when it really does bring to life the entirety of the oval, plus also that infield section and that bus stop chicane. But as our drivers take this circuit on, they'll find it'll be a high speed charge all the way in towards turn number 1, and as they make the way into that sweeping left-hander, well, if you tuned in to the most recent broadcast from here at SimRacing International in the GTE series, you may recall that a lot of our drivers in the season opener at Daytona were using all the runoff area at turn number 1 in order to open up that corner as much as possible and carry speed. Well, we're now going to say that that track limit has been shut down by iRacing recently. They are not allowed to use that runoff area anymore, so our drivers have to be a lot tighter to the entry of turn 1, and you'll see that with the onboard shortly as we go into qualifying. Then as we make our way out to turn number 1, our drivers will then have to contend with the right-left combination of turns 2 and 3. You don't want to mount the curbs there on cold tyres or even warm tyres, as otherwise you'll find yourself with certainty onto the grass or alternatively into the pit wall barrier. But get it right, you'll head into the first of the 2 hairpins at Horseshoe at turn number 4. It'll be hard on the brakes, and as our drivers make the way back on themselves, go into the sweeping left-hander at turn number 5. Flat out for the most part, but given the fact most of our drivers will be running minimum rear wing, we could see a few cars come very loose through there, and they might have to lift off the throttle. But then they'll head into the turn 6 hairpin, the second horseshoe, and as they come back on themselves again, it'll then be into the left-hand 90-degree right-angle corner of turn 7, in which they'll eject themselves back onto the oval and roar the way flat out through the curvature of turn number 8 to make the way towards the bus stop chicane of turns 9, 10, and 11. There, it's going to be a quick sweep through the left into right and the right into left, with a look try and carry as much speed as possible and return to full throttle immediately to make the way onto the bank into turn number 12 to complete the lap and do it all over again. But noting the fact, of course, that doing this by yourself around here is going to be nowhere near as quick as having the draft of another car, and we can expect in clear air our drivers to push towards 170 miles an hour. When they've got a tow, they could be pushing 175 to 180 miles an hour, depending on how strong the tow is and how much aero they've taken off the car. Now, it's at this point we would perhaps bring you the standings, but the standings are still being worked on, as is the SimRacing International tradition going into a season where we bring you the standings normally by the broadcast of round number 3. So we can't bring you the standings today, but what we can do is head back to circuit side, ladies and gentlemen, and see how qualifying is getting underway. So as we hear the lovely roar of some machinery making its way around, I think that's 2 of our Audis there. They're Audi engines, I should say, that I'm hearing. However, they are not Audis, they are Lamborghinis. Well, we do have 2 other Lamborghinis here of Danny Van and also Ashley Kootland heading on through. But in this qualifying session right now, with 22 minutes to go, what's the story? Well, right now, it is currently this man, of Van who is currently the fastest of everybody in the 143 Lamborghini Huracan Evo with its 4.2-litre V10 engine in the back, and as he makes his way around here right now, well, I can tell you one thing, he's the fastest by only 600ths, and I suspect there's been some slipstream that's aided in that, and he's been closely matched by his fellow compatriot in the car, and it's none other than Ashley Kootland. And Kootland, he was a little bit of a concern whether he'd be able to make today due to an injury he picked up earlier in the week, but I'm pleased to see he's here today, and hopefully he's not going to push himself too hard for relentless racing, because whilst we do love to see all our drivers on the grid, health always comes first, of course, whether it be mental or physical here at SimRacing International, and I'm sure Ashley actually has taken the appropriate precautions to make sure that he's all set to go. Do believe it was a leg injury of some description, but he's been able to get stabilised, and we're very happy to see him here. But they're the two fastest, and then Lewis Kenyon, well, he's not too much further back. He is only what is a further 100th behind in the Porsche 992 GT3, and as he makes his way around right now, well, if you base it on the current balance performance that we are seeing on iRacing, this should be the Porsche Cup, as many are saying, in the build-up to today. But right now, whilst the Porsches are looking strong, Kenyon, Modig, and also there Anthony completing what is 3 Porsches inside the top 6, they are not necessarily the ones leading the way when it comes to the Lamborghinis matching them. Although we need to talk a little bit about Cy Anthony, because right now he's looking very quick out there as he makes his way on around. And the number 27 driver here from UK Sim Racing, well, UK Sim Racing Hamilton, they're dedicated to Lewis Hamilton, the 7-time Formula 1 champion, or Sir Lewis Hamilton we should say. That's not how you come out of turn number 5. Goodness me, who's that rolling backwards in the Ford Mustang? That's definitely not the way you want to go, and almost there collecting a couple of drivers and trying to understand who that was. I think that might have been the Ford Mustang there of none other than what was Mike Barber, though don't quote me on that, because that was not a Quatermass Motorsport livery we saw, unless they are running a slightly different livery on the car today. No, that definitely wasn't Barber. There he is, making his way around, so proving our words. But whoever that was, my goodness, that's definitely a big surprise there, as we look to another Ford Mustang, and Chris Jennings heading on the way round. But as we come from the theme of Ford Mustangs back to the fault of Cy Anthony, well, he's currently the fastest of your pro drivers out there as he tiptoes his way around in his Porsche 911. And I wonder whether anyone can get close to him, because he is currently a whole tenth faster, and as soon as I was about to say a tenth faster than Ville Katonen, then suddenly Katonen goes the fastest of everybody overall on a 44.992, 200ths faster than Danny Van Oom. But I suspect there's going to be more time out there, and it's all going to come down to who can find that slipstream at the latest part of the day. But as we come into the depths of the qualifying session, we need to give you a recap then of really the story from what was round the 1. We don't have any standings, but we can definitely show you the drivers and talk about the story. So, in elite class, this was the man who led the way in the end to victory, albeit it was a 4-way battle for the win. This is Tseard Ploeg, the Dutchman, who in the end, as we said earlier, surprised himself with the fact he was able to save so much fuel compared to his rivals, and he found himself in an absolutely brilliant 4-way fight for the win, including with his teammate of Lewis Kenyon, but also with Milton Tomlinson-Dennis, who had an absolute rapturous number of fans tuning in for him, and I suspect the Mercedes driver is going to have even more tuning on for him today with the World of Racing team. And also there was the fight with William Humphrey, and well, William Humphrey proved one thing if nothing else as he rides the back there of Nathan Anstis's car for UK Sim Racing Norris, and William Humphrey demonstrated literally into turn 1 that in that Aston Martin he is not afraid to use the brakes and the entire range of the ABS system to show just how late he can brake. And I did have a chat with him after the race, not post-round interview, but also late on in the paddock when I called him as the team were packing up the car for Vulcan Fastest by Glass Tip Racing, and he said to me he was very grateful to have that talked about in the broadcast for the simple reason it's something he prides himself massively on, and well, that pride is very well deserved. I can tell you one thing, William Humphrey there surprised everybody with how far he can extend into the braking zones and how far back he can come from. And even his rivals did also say, begrudgingly, the fact they wish they could brake like he could, albeit he did require his rivals to be respectful to the fact he was going to go for the lunges. Always with big battles like that, you always require it to work 2 ways, where the attacker and the defender have both got to respect each other. But that's what the classes here in Pro and also Elite are all about, particularly Elite drivers here, 20 drivers who have the utmost respect for everybody else on the field, and they give it everything, but they also know when sometimes it's time to back out. But William Humphrey today, of course, the Aston Martin not as quick in a straight line, and that might be the bane of the car around here. He's only imagined 11th at the moment, but he is trying to work with drivers around him, not necessarily in his team, to find a bit more time. But with the fight that was going on between the 4 drivers, well, many thought it was this man who was going to be bringing home the win, Tomlinson-Dennis. He was the quickest and a good portion of the race, and he did gradually create a little bit of a gap over the racing distance. However, to keep that lead, the Mercedes-AMG Evo driver had to use a lot more fuel in his 6.3 litre V8 engine, and that's what cost him the opportunity to take the win. So in the end, he actually had to settle for 4th place, with Tseard Ploeg taking the win ahead of his teammate of Lewis Kenyon, and Vulcan Motorsports made it a 1-2 to start off their season strong over in the elite class. And then William Humphrey was the 3rd place man, who in the end had to hold off the intentions of Tomlinson-Dennis just for the final couple of laps. So that was the story of the elite class. It was strategy and a top 4 that was absolutely inseparable. Meanwhile, in the Pro class, this was the man who absolutely dictated the storyline. He put himself on class pole position by a comfortable margin, and in the end he absolutely walked away with it, did Rhys Saunders, and I don't think anybody really had a response, especially given the fact he took pole position by a tenth of a minute Blohm, but he had 3 elite drives between him and Blohm when they went to the grid, and it was that gappage initially that enabled him to feel safe. But Saunders toes his way to the pit lane. Then it was the fight for second place. One of the 2 protagonists for it was none other than Kyle Roy, with Menno Blohm having difficulty right at the start of the race, and it really opened up the door for the Scotsman to try and come on through, as it did for the Briton of none other than Liam Fraser. But Roy's Corvette, for all the speed it had in the corners at the Sachsenring on the first half a lap, it seemingly struggled a little bit versus the brute power of the Mercedes AMG of Liam Fraser in the second half lap, where the straights opened up a little bit. And here we can see Liam Fraser right now trying to get things together, as he's all the way down in 41st place in this qualifying session. But of course, given the fact that to be down in 41st, 1.1 seconds off a pole, that tells you something here. This will probably be the closest qualifying session of the season in the importance of the slipstream. We saw how close it was at the Sachsenring. We were top 10 separated by less than half a second. But here right now, it's not even a second to get you to the bottom of the top 30. It's almost a second. We have 30th place man and Nathan Anstis being 8.5 tenths off of the overall pole time. And well, if that doesn't tell you how close it is, I don't know what will. And I suspect right now, if anybody outside the top 30 was to find a couple of attempts, because they find the right toe, they would suddenly be leaping their way all the way up inside that top 30, perhaps even inside the top 20 if they get it absolutely right. And in terms of Fraser versus Roy, how exactly did it end up going the way of Liam Fraser? Well, it wasn't strategy slightly, he just was able to beat Roy in strategy, and then in the closing stages, Roy really pushed hard to chase down Liam Fraser, but in the end came up against a bit of a brick wall in terms of the fact Fraser was never going to give in, and also tyre wear started to become an increasing factor for Roy in his Corvette, and that's how Liam Fraser was able to land what was that second place in the class. I just presume it's going to be a bit of a different story today if we're seeing some very different names all the way to the very top. Well, that's the recap after what is our first round of the championship in terms of the Drivers' Championships, and in the Teams' Championship, where it is Vulcan Motorsports who lead the way across both our lobbies with that absolute landmark 1-2 result. We say hello to a few more of you, including none other than Soviet Seek, who says, yes, there's incredible brakes to help there, and indeed a good set of brakes will help out, particularly in turns 1 and also 4 and 6. And Tim Wolfdig there in the Porsche 911, and we're hoping that his brakes in that Porsche can be just as strong. And we also do say hello there to Beth Globo, who says MTD supporters back again, which is absolutely brilliant. But we also see Soviet Seek there saying he's cheering on the Beowulf racing team. And indeed, we've got such a variety of drivers around here, as we also do say hello there to Craig Tillerson, who says, good luck tonight, guys. Taking a break from the Daytona 24 practice to watch some racing, and good to have you tuned in, Craig. And keep in mind, of course, this coming weekend is the official iRacing 24 Hours of Daytona, which does run just before the official Rolex 24 Hours of Daytona, which has been held here at this circuit since 1966, albeit known as the 24 Hours of Daytona, but due to sponsorship reasons currently it is known as the Rolex 24 Hours of Daytona. But indeed, crazy to think that this year it will be 50 years since the very first holding of the 24 Hours of Daytona. And we've seen some absolutely incredible conclusions to it in real life, and indeed some incredible conclusions to it on the iRacing platform. But of course, we've got 2 30-minute sprint races here today as Alan Leather makes his way around. Now, what does that mean with regards to the 2 30-minute sprint races? What can you expect as we see Harry Shaw here for the Iron Apex Esports team making his way on through? Well, what you can expect around here is the fact there is no strategy today as far as pit stops are concerned. With a 30-minute race and the fuel tanks as they are, our drivers will be getting to the end of both races unscathed in terms of starting fuel capacity. However, there is a lot of strategy here because of the slipstream. It does mean that running in the pack is going to be important, and you can't just simply, or necessarily, as Harry Shaw there definitely demonstrates how wide you can go into turn 1 without leaving the white line there. 2 wheels exactly on the white line. I mean, if you're any way wider than that, he would be getting the slowdown penalty and invalidation for that lap. Indeed, pushing those track limits to the maximum, which is what you've got to do to be the very best. As he makes his way out of the hairpin, well, the strategy, of course, being in the draft, and we don't expect anyone to really make a breakaway necessarily by running in clear air, unless there's a big fight going on in the mid-pack. If somebody is able to start well and break away from the drivers behind them, then it turns a completely different complexion. That's where you are able to break away, but also the inverse is true, which is at that point, you can imagine some drivers will opt to try and work together. And we do see Mark De Vries there in the number 25 Corvette, making his way on around there, running the official Corvette Pratt & Miller colours. And well, onwards he goes towards what will be the bus stop chicane. But as all these drivers continue to make the way on around, well, we look a little bit further down the order. Here's Frank Buesen, and right now he's down in 42nd place, or 24th of our pro drivers. Indeed, we do have here today a grand total of 55 of our 60 competitors for this season. It's an absolutely huge grid, which is absolutely brilliant to see. And well, the majority of the field is made up of pros, of course. There is that 20-40 split out of our 60 drivers, 20 elite and 40 pros. But regardless of how it splits, I can tell you one thing, they're all here to have a good time and have fun out there. But as we get ourselves set for what will be the closing stage of the session now, we need to bring in on board that with one of our drivers, ladies and gentlemen. Don't worry, we haven't forgot about that. We're just waiting for somebody to come through. And I think, given we're at the USA, we're going to jump on board with Mark De Vries as he takes us around for a flying lap. So coming down towards turn number 1 is Corvette, and braking as late as he dares, about 190 metres from the entry point is the corner, down to second gear, he trail brakes, and now immediately back on full throttle as he comes through 1 in towards 2-3. Straight lines his way between the 2 curves there, it was a little bit tight to 2, and that cost him some speed into 3, but now onto the brakes, 100 metres from corner apex into turn 4. A lot of traffic comes out the pit lane, but it will respect the fact that De Vries is on a lap here. What will help him is he'll get the toe of the Aston Martin in front of him as he makes his way to 5. Let's listen in. No lift there at all for De Vries through turn number 5. We wouldn't expect it under qualifying conditions, but perhaps in the early stage of the race. Now through the hairpin, braking about 120 metres from corner apex, down to first gear, back on full throttle at this point, and making his way up towards turn 7. Bring the car over to the right, hard on the brakes, putting 2 wheels beyond the white lines there to open up the corner, and now mounts the curb and charges his way out. And De Vries right now gets the power down too quick, and the car goes spinning on around and drops into the apron there. De Vries just a bit too eager, and in the end, the 5.5 litre V8, the 6LT engine, just giving too much torque to the rear wheels, and the rear of the car going sliding on around. And well, for De Vries, it was a good start to the lap, but a little bit of eagerness there on the road surface transition just cost him what was that grip, and therefore the ability to keep the car pointing in a straight line, and he'll keep on pushing. But as he does so, well, meanwhile, who else is out there on a go? Well, we do have Sight Anstey here, and he hops and skips his way through the bus stop chicane, the second fastest of your pro drivers. He's currently 10th with Villa Cotonen's lap time of 44.992, still standing strong. But when we consider the weather for today, here it is. Well, look at that. Ambient temperature 26 degrees centigrade. Track temperature currently 46 degrees centigrade. It is hot on that tarmac, and when you do have that hot track surface, plus also the fact that this is a minimum downforce circuit, nobody wants to be running any rear wing, because if you do, yes, you'll gain a lot in the infield section, but you'll lose out massively when you make your way onto the oval banking. That means that these cars over their rear ends are going to be very slippery, whereby under braking, for example, into turn number 1, you'll find that if you're especially in what might be a front engine rear wheel drive car, such as the Ford Mustang or the Mercedes AMG Evo or the BMW M4 Evo, the rear end of the car, if you don't brake in a straight line and let the car gradually retard into the corner, you'll find that rear end tries to come around very quickly. But keep in mind, those cars, they've already got all the weight to the front, and on top of that as well, they've got no weight at the rear of the car by the time you come off the brake. So essentially the whole front of the car wants to go into the corner, and the rear is as light as a feather by comparison, and it chucks itself round. Conversely, when you do have mid-engine rear-wheel drive, or in the case of the Porsche we're seeing here, rear-engine rear-wheel drive, well, the idea is you have all that weight at the rear come forward. It really tries to move into the middle of the car, and it can make the car quite sensitive at mid-apex and on corner exit as well, as the rear tries to come around quicker than the front gets adhesion. And that's what we saw happen to Mark De Vries coming out of turn number 7, whereby essentially the front of the car had planted itself down, the rear was still coming on through as he got the power down, and in the end the rear right tyre spun up too aggressively, and the rear hadn't settled enough, and that's what sent him around. But as we see a bit of an escape road attempt there from Tseard Ploeg and the Acura NSX22 Evo, well, he's decided enough's enough on that lap, he's going to go again, but go high for a bit. And we also do have their Sight Anstey going a bit low, deciding to stay on the apron. Well, right now the weather's hot, the track temperature's just gone up to 47 degrees centigrade on average, so it's getting warmer and warmer, and that might explain why we're not seeing too many more improving lap times here. And well, the Vulcan Motorsports team, they decide not to go for a photo opportunity, although it's a brilliant one there if you're a trackside photographer. And the idea is I think they're now going to try and get a group of 4 of them together, and they're all going to try and use the slipstream off for each other for the final 7 minutes to see whether they can get themselves to lock out the front 2 rows of the grid. It's going to be a bold gambit here, because of course they'll try to work together, but when you do have the best part currently at least of what is 50 cars out on circuit almost, well, 3.56 miles doesn't go very far for its 50 cars. You do the mathematics there, and, well, I'm sure you'll agree with me, it is not much space to work with, but they're going to try and work with it anyway. The Strugs right now still trying to find what is that space and give it some time. Give them time, and they just impress us all with what be a few more laps to go. But looking further down, who are the big surprises? Who are the ones that perhaps are losing out in this qualifying session by comparison? Well, as we do see Hayden Miller there for the Vulcan Motorsports team tucking in. He's currently the 9th fastest, 8th of your elite drivers, and well, he's just behind Milton Tomlinson-Dennis in terms of the time in tower, although noting your top 10 separated, well, your top 9 separated by 1.5 tenths. That's how close it is, and it's a pro at the head of all the elite drivers. Meanwhile, further down, William Humphrey right now, he's latching onto the Vulcan Motorsports train. He sees what's up here, as we do see, I believe, the DC Motorsport machine there of Jared Love going low, so he decides he doesn't want to be a part of that story. Well, in fact, that was Peter Duke's Corvette. Let me correct myself there. And Duke making his way on around right now. Well, he doesn't want to play the games here, but right now, William Humphrey's in a bit of a situation because he tucks into this long line of the Vulcan Motorsports cars. They're all trying to stay out of the way of the traffic. They're all waiting, but of course, they'll look behind them, and they've out-qualified him. So in their perspective, they could, in theory, just play some silly games here, but that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to figure out how to get a clear bit of track and get themselves set, as they do pick up some speed here, as they've got a bit of time between themselves and the next cars. Sinkavicius, meanwhile, well, he cuts the track a bit. He will have to essentially give that time back, but he won't be too upset about that, and they all get ready to go. But goodness me, it is definitely right now, they're trying to be smart with this. They're not doing anything as far as I'm aware in the rule, but there's nothing that says you can't do this as long as you're not inconveniencing other drivers. And to be fair, well, I don't think William Humphrey will say he's been inconvenienced here, and if he tried to, I get the feeling they'd immediately go, well, come on, you've been behind us all the way for the last 4 minutes. But as they make the way on towards what will be another lap, well, here we go for all these drivers, ladies and gentlemen, and we jump board with William Humphrey as he takes us around for a flying lap. So making his way in towards turn number 1 then, in the long line of cars. 4 cars in front of him. This is going to be a huge amount of tow as he exits turn 1 in second gear. Now getting the power down here with the V8 machinery, the Mercedes power plant in the front of this car, supplemented by the bi-turbo. And now onto the brakes he goes in towards turn number 4, all the way down to second gear, but it's a little bit scrappy there for what is the Corvette in front of him of Hayden Miller that doesn't quite get the power out the corner. So right now Humphrey will know that the infield section at least has been down to the best part of what is 2 to 3 attempts, but he'll see if he can improve here in the latter half of the lap. He needs to follow the train now as he makes his way through turn number 6 down to second gear, holding that gear all the way for as long as he can. Keep in mind, of course, the Aston Martin does have a bit of torque lag at the bottom end. It needs to be in the higher revs wherever possible. Now through turn number 7, takes a very tight line. There's so many drivers doing that. Previously we've seen them take wider lines, but this season they're definitely attacking it more and more. And now on as he goes, and Humphrey backing off again here as Miller also backs off. So these two right now, they are refusing to essentially give way to one another, albeit they're playing it all fairly, but I think they're going to leave it to the last possible moment. So we're going to leave them alone for a little bit. And perhaps the biggest surprise of them all is that Rhys Saunders is currently parked up in the pit lane, and he's currently only your 27th fastest overall, or 12th in the pro class. So Saunders has not had a qualifying session really to shout home about, as Rochon continues his journey just a little bit ahead. But then again, we are to expect that, of course, balanced performance weaves and winds its way back and forth in favour in some cars at some circuits and other cars at others. We know the Ford Mustang has been one of the stronger cars on the balance points based on Sachsenring, and of course Rhys Saunders was saying he selected the car for this season on the basis that it is currently one of the stronger cars in the BOP. However, it will always have its outliers, and here at Daytona it does seem it's the Porsches and also Lamborghinis that are the strongest, although we do have the Acura Ploeg, the one Acura on this grid, that right now is sticking itself right up in the top spots there as well. So it always does mix things up. But one driver who right now you can always count to mix things up, and we see him here, he was leading the Sachsenring in the pro class until it went a bit wrong in the early stages. It is Fortes Katios, who found a lot of gravel midway through the race in Germany, and here today, well, there's no real gravel to find. There is plenty of grass, however, and hopefully he doesn't touch it. But as he makes his way into the pit lane, respecting the pit limiter line there, at least at this moment, or the McLaren 720S Evo driver right now makes his way along, and well, I think he'll be happy with 34th, and we can always expect him to fight his way all the way through the field. He loves doing so. But one driver who's having a much better day at the office today, he's currently 4th fastest of the pro drivers, 16th overall, is Wesley Van Rens as the number 99 Porsche driver. Well, he's currently quite close to that top 15. He's only out of it by 2,000, and the next man he's going to beat for that will be be the Audi R8 Mark II Evo of Max Wheeler. And Wheeler bringing the Audi to this season, and particularly bringing it to this circuit where it's a minimum downforce circuit. That is very brave, I can assure you of that. The Audi is one of those cars that is very sensitive on its rear end with regards to aero balance. And, well, Wheeler is going to find that Audi is going to be one of the stronger cars when we come to more corner-orientated circuits, such as what we had previously at none other than what was the Sachsenring. But when we come to circuits like this, where heavy braking zones and suddenly a lot of weight transfer over the car, the Audi might just be a little bit more tricky. And the same at Misano as well. The Audi really is a bit of a chalk and cheese car at Misano, where it can be very strong, but it can also be very sensitive to oversteer. But 1.5 minutes left on the clock then, and as we do see the Vulcan Motorsports drivers make the way then onto one last trip, Benedictus Sinkevicius moves to the top, and it's a 44.843, so they have delivered eventually. And, well, the Lamborghini driver now puts Villa Katonen down to second place. Will we have an Elite and Pro all front row? We'll have to see, because it will be the two pole sitters of the classes right now who will share it. Can anybody else find some time out there with not long left in the session? We've got a minute left, plus any overtime that's available, of which we normally do have overtime for what is the best part of about 2 to 3 minutes to allow anyone who's on a lap to finish it. But what else is happening further down? Well, Jesper Svensson in the Ford Mustang. This was the car that we saw go spinning backwards out of turn 5 into this corner at turn 6 earlier, so we finally found our man. Well, Svensson right now is down in 36th place, and he's not the lowest placed elite driver. That is going to go to Ime Hasselaar right now, his teammate, as they're both struggling, the Beowulf Racing Team drivers. But then again, keep in mind, of course, qualifying is just one lap. The races, they are multiple laps, and that's always going to be the thought process for our drivers, in the fact they can always try to deliver over the course of what will be time in the races. They can always pick up more places by comparison. It is going to be a bit of a game and gambit between them all. But we look to James Howarth as well, as he makes his way around. And Howarth right now, well, he is down in 37th place. I think his full process at this point is going to be that this is not going to be the strongest qualifying session for himself, but there's going to be more timers. In fact, we don't get overtime, ladies and gentlemen. I do apologise for misleading you on that. Well, because it's a sprint race round, we go straight to the grid and we head our way in then to how they'll line up for race number 1. So as they make their way to the grid, this is how they'll line up. It is pole position for Benedictus Sinkevicius. The Vulcan Motorsports driver will be joined on the front row of the grid by none other than the pro pole sitter to join the elite pole sitter of Villa Katonen. The Beowulf Racing Team driver from Finland will then be followed up by the Dutchman of Danny van who for Relentless Racing has the company of Vulcan Motorsports, Tseard Ploeg. The Dutchman will then be followed up by the teammate of van of Ashley Koetlen, who starts 5th directly behind his teammate ahead of Lewis Kenyon. The Vulcan Motorsports driver then being followed up by Tim Modi for SimCoach and Milton Tomlinson-Dennis of World of Racing for STR Motorsports. Hayden Miller will start in 9th place for Vulcan Motorsports ahead of Cy Anthony. Brilliant effort there from Cy Anthony, no doubt about it, for UK SimRacing Hamilton. And then we do see behind them on row number 11, it is going to be Mike Barber for Quakemas Motorsports and William Humphrey, who starts in 12th place for Vulcan Fasters by Glass Tech Racing. Then we do have Mark Hutchinson there for Altitude 3M Esports ahead of Mikey Story, who will be your 3rd place pro starter for Dexterous Motorsports Quar, and he'll be ahead of Max Wheeler for Phoenix Racing Blue and Wesley Van Rens for 9 Pegasus Pantera Racing. We then do have Brandon Dyer starting 17th for Inter Racing Team ahead of Axis Sinsport X's Thomas Pugh, with your top 20 being completed by Alan Lever for UK SimRacing Hamilton and Danny Phillips. Behind the Dexterous Motorsport Car driver, it will then be 21st place to none other than Nicholas Carlson, with the Beowulf Racing Team driver in the company of Mark DeVries of SimRacing Team Lowlands. And then we do have Wayne Douglas, who is 23rd for DC Motorsport Privateers ahead of Kyle Roy for Miracle Group M Academy. Then we will see behind them what will be none other than Adam Baker, who starts in 25th place for LS Racing ahead of Ross Young, with the Dexterous Motorsport Zemeckis driver then in the company of Reece Saunders for Altitude 3M Esports and Ryan Nickerson for Splitstrack Esports. From the Canadian, it will be MRC 495's Jack Wyborn, and he'll be in the company of Harry Shaw, who begins his season in 30th place for Iron Apex Esports. Outside the top 30, it's 31st place for Menno Blom for SimRacing Team Lowlands ahead of Chris Jennings, and then the Axis Sinsport X driver will have Nathan Anstis and Fortis Katios behind him, with row number 18 going to Schubert Cardozo and Jesper Svensson. And then we do have James Howarth and Robin Noel Brown, followed up by Peter Duke and Jared Love, the DC Motorsport teammates, completing at that top 40. Outside the top 40, it's Liam Fraser ahead of Frank Busian, with then Bert Macklin ahead of Jamie Bardwell. And then we have Alex Fretwell ahead of Joe Sparrow on row number 23, ahead of Matthew Jordan, the privateer, and Stephen Donnelly. Your top 50 is completed by Matthew Bacon and Mark Johnson. And then outside the top 50, our final 3 rows, it is Lorenzo Gorjetto ahead of Ime Hasselaer, with David Hutchison and Dan Zilliers on the final penultimate full row. And then it'll be Ashley Brooks, 55th for your starting order, ladies and gentlemen. So here we go. We're not too far away. And as all the drivers make the way around, well, it's only one banking and the flat before we do end up going green flag racing for the first time in our sprint race here at what is the Daytona International Speedway. For Split A, it'll be race 1 of round 2 of the championship. And as Sinkevicius got the job done late on in the day in qualifying to get ahead of Ila Katonen, will it be the same way when we go green flag racing? Well, ladies and gentlemen, the BMW M2 safety car is about to pull in, and we are about to find out as we're about to go green flag racing. And it's lights out and away we go here for Sinkevicius as we are green flag as they roar the way down towards turn number 1 as all the drivers come into that heavy braking zone. Well, right now, who's going to make some ground, who's not? Sinkevicius does hold off Katonen quite early as Mildig gets involved there in the mid-pack. Multiple drivers still coming down into the chop of the hairpin, but it looks so 2-3 wide and everyone is safely on through. But now we come to a proper hairpin at turns 4 and also 6. And as we do look to Ashley Cooper here fighting, he has William Humphrey inside and the exchanging blows just behind him. They're getting intense with each other and Cooper will be grateful for a bit of breathing room. Further back, we've got a couple of cars. In fact, one to the grass, that's Robin Noel Brown. We saw briefly in the rear of the picture. So Noel Brown's had a bit of a nightmare start to this race now at turn 4. He'll be able to get it back together as all these drivers make their way into the second hairpin. Mike Barber there fighting with Mikey Story on the inside there in the yellow and black Porsche versus the Quaintmass Motorsport 4 Mustang. And right now the very colourful 104 machine is trying to hold on and he looks to the fence the inside, but it's maybe all for naught here as they make their way onto the drag race that will be onto the banking. Albeit the 4 Mustang Tribe does get ahead for now, but Story will have the toe of course, and then it's going to be a whole new chapter. Further back, this is almost 3 wide here. So that's Nicholas Carlson and the Lamborghini trying to go on the high line versus Mark DeVries, and Thomas Pugh's gone down low in front of them, and Wayne Douglas is trying to follow them. But the DC Motorsport privateer driver right now powering his way onwards, and as he does so with the 66 driver here holding well as they get right into that braking zone. Douglas looking one way then the other, onto the brakes he goes, and as he does so, Will Carlson on the inside is switching back. Lovely bit of manoeuvring there for Carlson. That's for 6th place in the pro class. He's going to take that place quite well. As meanwhile, Cy Anthony's gone on the round, and Anthony's had a big spin coming out of the chicane. I'm not quite sure what's happened there to number 27 driver, but he's pointing backwards. That's not a good sign. We're going to replay that when we can. But meanwhile, looking back towards the very front, well, after what is 1 lap complete, Sinkevicius right now controlling this race, head of Ila Katonen, who is currently your pro leader. But these 2 drivers right now are starting to pull a bit of a gap at the front, with Lewis Kenyon being brought along behind. Next, Milton Tomlinson-Dennis in 4th at the moment. And what is none other than what is 3rd place in the elite class. He's had a great start as Tomlinson-Dennis. He's moved all the way up from 7th place into 4th place. Yep, was correct there. And as he makes his way around right now, the World of Racing STR Motorsports driver, and still got a bit more pressure on him as we look back from the rear of the 192 Mercedes. Now that behind him is Danny Venom and Ashley Cooper, the 2 relentless racing drivers who are trying to work against him right now. I think Tomlinson-Dennis here, his idea will be to try and keep Lewis Kenyon in front to keep himself safe. It's all about the game of trying to stay in the toe of the guy in front if you can, and that will keep you safe all the way around the entirety of the lap. The only problem is these hairpins, that's where the Porsche is so strong compared to its rivals, and then it's got a bit of straight line speed as well, so it really has got a double whammy with regards to what is its abilities here, whereas the Mercedes has the power on the straights but not the traction coming out the hairpins or low speed corners, although Tomlinson-Dennis would like to show otherwise. Indeed, many of you commenting there on the start from MTD as he's known, and indeed Tomlinson-Dennis doing a brilliant start there to leap his way forward. But as all these drivers now head onto the banking for the 2nd time, further down we've got some fighting going on. Ashley Brooks here, back to Sport White, enjoying a bit of side-by-side with Brandon Dyer. As Dyer going high there in the Porsche, the elite driver who's in amongst all the pros, and the 2 of them rubbing slightly, and Brooks backing out there. He flashes headlights, he's not too happy about that. And I think understandably he was worried there about the fact as we ride on board the front bumper camera of the number 19, he was worried that essentially that cut from Dyer was going to see the 2 make contact and see one of them speared into the barrier. As Brooks looks up the inside, and that's just a cheeky look there to try and get into Dyer's head. It will cost him a bit of time on entry, but of course he'll have the slipstream to work with on exit there as we do see the reformatting the curbing and where's the bus stop chicane. So these drivers stay together for now. As they come on towards the banking this time around, Brooks falls back a little bit, but he won't be too upset about that because he'll gradually gain once again. As Danny Sidiers follows him from behind, and Sidiers has had a monster start. He's gained 10 places in class and 13 overall. So some drivers had a monster start compared to others, as meanwhile we've got a bit of monstrous battling here. It's forward on forward action, it's the V8 duel, and that's going to be Noel Brown. Well, it's not Noel Brown, that is Tim Donnelly and Chris Jennings fighting each other. That's Robin Noel Brown is just up the road from them. Coming through the corner, we've got some difficulties going for other drivers, and I do believe we might have Svensson. Oh, hold up a second. Who's that in the middle of the road there? Or in the middle of the grass, I should say. Somebody's parked up there. You don't normally park there. Oh, and there's all contact here now, as that's going to be Donnelly in contact with Jennings. And in the end, well, the two drivers just about surviving. Everyone else goes around the outside of them all, but Stephen Donnelly and Chris Jennings there definitely having a bit of an altercation. I think they'll discuss that one after the races. There's been a spin in the rear of the picture for one of our Porsche drivers, and right now, yes, for Svensson, he's caught up to this. So Svensson was not the man who had the difficulties, although he's jumping up and down the timing tower. The Heracles performance driver, where exactly is he right now? He's in 42nd, but there's been a bit of shuffling. I think we're going to need to get a replay of something that's happened there, because our timing tower is jumping left, right and centre. But before that, Peter Duke now tries to compound the woes of Jennings. That's not going to work there as he looks around the outside, and Jennings just simply puts the car in the inside line and says to him, you can try it all you want, but right now you're not coming through. So the DC Motorsport driver in his Corvette has to tuck in behind once again as Wayne Douglas gives pursuit as well. And these drivers will have settled back down into line astern formation. But we've had difficulties for Ross Young, also for David Hutchison and Tseard Ploeg. So Ploeg's fallen a long way down the order, and I think that might explain why we saw the timing tower jumping around. But meanwhile, Duke right now can't find a way past Jennings as they fight over 43rd. As we look to the class standings positions, these are perhaps the more relevant positions for today, of course. Well, right now, as Tinkavicius has started to really open up a gap at the front, 1.6 seconds is the gap to leader in the Lamborghini. So right now, he's almost clear of the slipstream here. If he gets that gap to 2 seconds and keeps it there, if not increases it, Tinkavicius will be safe for the rest of the race. He won't have to worry about the cars behind him. And I wonder whether Lewis Kenyon's had to fight with Villa Katonen so much, that's what's caused the gap to open. And now Kenyon's going to try and demonstrate whether he can catch up to his teammate. And the thing is at Vulcan Motorsports, what do you do here? Do you say to the lead driver, back off slightly and let Kenyon catch into the toe? Or do you say, no, run away, Benedictus? Lewis is on his own now for the rest of this race. I think Kenyon's going to try and run away from the guys behind, and he's hoping that the Beowulf Racing Team driver of Villa Katonen will just hold him at bay. Well, if so, that might be a way to go for it here, really. Right now, Kenyon's just got to simply make the pro leader have to work for this, albeit if you are Katonen, would it not be more advisable, perhaps, to start backing off a little bit and fall backwards into this pack? Because remember, we do have what is the inverted grid for race number 2, and I do believe it is a top 15 inversion for that race, unless I'm mistaken. So therefore, right now for Villa Katonen, that's overall, I should point out, for Katonen, it'd actually be wise for him to potentially lose some places and therefore still be the pro winner of this one, but at the same time, by falling backwards, he would just give himself the opportunity not to worry as much. Well, it's easy said, it's a lot harder to be done, of course, when you do think about this, for the simple reason when you're going at these speeds, and the fact one small mistake can cost you dear. But as he heads on through, right now for Katonen, it is a fault here that he might need to play the game of passively losing places, because it's a 5-second gap from the back of Katonen's group, which is Tim Modig in 9th place, to this man, the 2nd place pro driver, who is in 10th place of Wesley Van Rens. So Katonen can afford this, and he would naturally give himself a better start to next race. As hold on, that's Tomlinson-Dennis, and well, there's a Lamborghini trying to rejoin as well. That is the Lamborghini of Danny Van. They've both gone around as the whole field comes up to them. Tomlinson-Dennis is not happy about that at all right now, and well, I think in the end, both drivers there will definitely look back at that one, and as they make their way into the braking zone, it's 3 wide. It's a reverse Moses manoeuvre on both sides there. Story and Hutchison trying to make some magic happen. Here comes Ryan Nicholson as well, the split track esports driver. He goes all in, and the 185 driver will take the place. Oh, Willie, as Tomlinson-Dennis right now gets the traction down, and that Mercedes is going so strong in towards the hairpin as they make it onto the brakes. Nicholson goes all in. That's brave from the Canadian driver there, and right now he's really trying to get involved. He's faulted Katios, his teammate in the pro class, says, can I come out and play as well? And Katios looks one way, then the other, tucks in behind his teammate and rides the slipstream all the way through. But as we do see Nicholson go a bit deep here, Katios right now might actually take the place of his teammate. He does, in fact. as Nicholson's going to tuck in behind him. You can see it then, the TV camera in the middle bottom of your screen, in the fact that Nicholson, by being so aggressive versus Tomlinson-Dennis, he's actually let his teammates on pass. But as they make the way onto the bank in this time, well, this has been 9 minutes of a race so far. We've still got another 2/3 of it or so to go, and it's been a race that's been absolutely gripping. But I can imagine there's going to be even more of this before all is said and done, as Ketios right now bounces his way between the curves and the driver making his way on through at this point. Well, onto the oval bank and he goes, and the split track esports driver in the number 90 right now knows that if his teammate Nicholson gets ahead, then he's got Nicholas Carlson to deal with, and Carlson is right behind Nicholson right now, and that will be the fight for what will be full place in the pro class should it materialise. And then a further 1.5 seconds back to Harry Shaw and Nathan Anstis, who are being pulled along. But without further ado, we do see there Leon Silims saying we need a replay. Indeed we do. We've got some replays lined up. Here we go back in time, ladies and gentlemen. We start off with what happened to Robin Noel Brown at the start of the race. Oh, goodness me, well that was coming out of turns 2 and 3 and just ended up going to the grass, and in the end, getting the car stopped there on what is the shorter hairpin, so thankfully able to avoid getting caught up in too much of that. So that explains what happened to him. We then had, well, there was a bit of an incident there that started, but I suspect we're going to see it now properly. This was Alex Fretwell, Frank Busen, and also Jamie Bardwell. They went 3 wide on the exit of the hairpin. In fact, 4 wide there were Noel Brown's return to the circuit, and Fretwell surviving, and the Porsche in front of him surviving, but unfortunately, I think that was Jamie Bardwell being sent a long way back. So the 3 crowded together were 4th. It didn't quite work out at all. We then had this for Katios, also on the open lap. This was coming in towards turn number 5. I suspect the split track esports driver behind his teammate at the time. What exactly went wrong here? And the answer is, well, there's an incident in front. My good lord, that Ferrari going very sideways. The 195, and in there now Jack Wyborn taking a trip sideways, and Wyborn in the end somehow, someway not collecting any other cars there. Everyone did very well to dodge the wayward car of Jack Wyborn, although I don't think he'll appreciate that at the time. We then had this for Kyle Roy only moments later. This was into turn number 7 where it went wrong for Roy. And under braking in, the Mirko Group M Academy driver went in. A small tap to the rear from the 91 Mercedes there. And that sent him on a long trip round. And that will be a frustration there for Roy, given the fact he was looking so good. That was Adam Baker who made the contact. We then had this for Cy Anthony. He was, at the time, running inside the podium place in the pro class through the bus stop chicane on the opening lap. Lost the rear of the car initially on the exit at 10, and after hitting the curve at 11, he lost it even more, and everyone else came into the scene and pushed him to the wall. And I don't think the car behind him, the Vulcan Fastest car, had anything really to be able to do reaction-wise there, but indeed a bit of a nightmare moment for Cy Anthony, and it's put him all the way to the back. This then happened to Peter Duke on lap number 2. This was Duke battling with the number 7 right behind him at this point. Into the braking zone they went. And as they did for turn number 6, rejoin there from Wayne Douglas, I believe. And the 2 DC Motorsport teammates taking each other out of the race. And I think right now there's going to be a lot of frustration in the garage there. There might be some words after that one. But then we had this from none other than Milton Tomlinson-Dennis. And this was the big incident on lap number 5. Now, this was the World of Racing STR driver making his way in towards turn 1. As he did so, there was the relentless racing car, Danny Van Oom, tapped him on the rear, sent Tomlinson-Dennis around, and Van Oom also went around with him. And as they then both went to rejoin, this was the camera angle we had at the time. Well, both drivers there trying to rejoin as the whole field then made its way to them, and that's the replay there. So a bit of contact, a tap, but a big tap at that one, and this was the on-board, I do believe, that we're going to get from Van Oom's perspective as he headed into the braking zone. Let's listen in. And coming down, I think he was hoping he could carry more speed, but I reckon that Tomlinson-Dennis had to back off a bit because of the concertina effect, and Van Oom by then did not realise it in time, and unfortunately the 2 drivers making contact. I think in the end for Van Oom it is going to be a bit of a slam dunk incident against him. However, I'm sure they'll talk about it afterwards and they'll agree, look, it's happened, it's racing, they'll move on. But as we come back to your live pictures, well, right now, all these drivers continuing to push on as we get towards the halfway point of the race. Those were some replays of the big moments from the opening, what has been 12 minutes or so of racing here at Daytona. We've still got a long way to go in this race, no doubt about it. And we look to Ryan Nicholson here, who's all over the back of Tomlinson-Dennis right now. After Tomlinson-Dennis has got himself pointed back in the right direction, well, the split track esports driver at the moment still ahead of his teammate Katios, but understandably at this point they want to move a bit further forward as that's the car taking a trip off the road. That is Ross Young there trying to respect the blue flags, and credit to him, he's doing everything he can to do so. As we look further back, that's an Aston Martin that's missing its entire front bumper. That is Schubert Cardozo for InterRacing Team, as he makes his way onto the brakes there. Right now going through turn 1, he's in a big crowd of cars. He's fighting in amongst what is a whole host of machinery, including none other than what will be your elite drivers there of Ime Hasselard and Mike Barber, as Barber goes very deep, and Mark de Vries right now in the Corvette is really trying to act as what is the cork here to plug all the places behind him, but Hasselard trying to look for a move. They all are, and they're all fighting as hard as they possibly can. Right now, can anybody find the way past that Corvette? Well, Hasselard's going to try it here, and Hasselard, who started all the way down in what was 52nd place, the Heracles Performance driver, has made a huge amount of progress since the start of this race. He's really coming through the field right now. He's got a lot more places to go, with 3 seconds to Jack Wyborn. I think now the progress is going to be limited a bit more, but understandably, the HP driving team machine is looking quick, and I can tell you the Dutchman right now is not letting his starting position hold him back whatsoever. That's credit to his tenacity. A bit further up the road into that next pack, we look for the JST racing machine of Joe Sparrow. He has got none other than Danny Phillips in the McLaren on the outside of him. Phillips right now trying to make this place back for Dutchman's Motorsports, but he's going to end up with a switchback in his favour, is Sparrow, as he tries to make it happen, but didn't quite. And Robin Noel Brown now tries to power his way on past all these drivers as they make the way onwards, but throttle fully down at this point. And what can the GPX SimSport Xenon driver do? The answer is, well, we ride on board here and see, because he looks to go higher and higher here. Well, he'll gradually build up that speed, but right now for Noel Brown, as there's been a bit of an instant to the wall there. He backs off entirely, car to the barrier. That, I believe, is Mikey Story's in the wall. How on earth has that managed to happen? Well, either way, as Noel Brown backs off entirely, there's Sparrow and Wyborn now go battling behind Phillips. So then they're all cautious about it, because you don't normally see an instant that high on the run towards the start-finish line, but that was Mikey Story in the barrier, and I believe the car for Story has had to be towed to the pit. And here's a quick replay. So this was Story making his way along, battling side by side. Whoa, goodness me, now that was a big loss of control there for Mikey Story. Now, if you're wondering why, that's a very nasty instant. That's essentially him chasing Nicholas Carlson, but what happened? We get you the on board here from Mikey Story. He switches, but in switching at above 175 miles an hour with no downforce in the rear of this car, with the wing literally limited to the bare minimum, in the end that car became a pendulum. The rear, where all the weight is concentrated in the Porsche, just swung loose, and the 38 Dexterous Motorsports Quamar Porsche in the end to the barrier. And for Story, well, my good lord, that is a huge shunt to the barrier, and I think his race is going to be in absolute arrears at this point. I don't think there's going to be any recovery from that, and I do hope he's okay, because I can tell you one thing, it may be simulated, but if he's on a direct drive rig, a hit at the barrier that much, if he's got the force feedback turned up, that is going to feel horrific through the steering wheel. But meanwhile, we come back to live pictures now, and as we do, here's Mark Hutchinson holding on to his spot for Altitude Esports. He's got Milton Tomlinson-Dennis trying to push him along as they come down towards what will be turn one. And right now, Hutchinson here just holding his ground. I don't think there's much more he can do at this point other than that. As he goes onto the brakes, Tomlinson-Dennis will go up the inside of him here. This will surely be just a natural switch around. But keep in mind that Max Wheeler is 2 seconds up the road, and these two are fighting. I don't think it's going to be a natural course of action. And instead, they are essentially locking in and fighting now for 9th place in the elite class. As the two drivers go side by side again, and we can see Wesley Van Ren's there. He's getting caught up in it. The 2nd place pro driver, Ryan Nicholson and Thomas Pugh, just fighting behind. And it's the Aston Martin of Pugh right now. He's trying to outrun that McLaren. These two cars very similar in terms of straight line acceleration. But in the end, Nicholson has that inside line into turn 6. His teammate there, Katios, is going to try and squeeze on in. He's trying to use his teammate really as a little bit of a bumper in order to make his way past multiple cars together. It's a valid team tactic here, and now Katios and Pugh will take up the fight, but it's going to be Katios around the outside of Pugh, or is it? Not quite, as the Axis SimSport X drive still holds on for now. He's not backing out of this, is Thomas Pugh. He's giving it everything he can, and Katios has to back out again. But I'll tell you one thing for this Katios, it must feel very challenging for him, and this isn't to belittle him, but he does have that attitude, the Greek driver. He fights at every position, but fighting for every position at Daytona, yes, you can have a brilliant fight for one place, but you're going to lose so much time to the guys in front, and we are really seeing a very patient style of driving here from the number 90 driver today. It's not common to see this much patience from him, but he's absolutely executing it with aplomb, and that's why he's 3rd in pro, chasing down 2nd of Wesley Van Ren's, whereas Harry Shaw, credit where it's due to him, the Iron Apex Esports driver, has come all the way up the field from what was a 13th place start in the pro class up to 4th, and he is trying to close down the gap to Katios. However, that gap stands at 2 seconds. Nicholson, however, may just offer him an opportunity here because Ryan Nicholson right now has a slowdown for track limits in the Boston chicane. He is serving it. That gap to Shaw is going to drop to about 7/10 by the time they get to the brain zone for turn 1. So Shaw right now may have just been given a golden opportunity. Or will he, as suddenly Nathan Anstis battles up the inside there. Nicholas Carlson goes all in. The Beowulf Racing team driving in, tucks in behind, missing a rear bumper there. I don't know, he's lost that. But that's a bit of weight reduction for him. Oh, there he'll upset the rear aero balance. Looks on the inside there, takes a bit of grass, and in the end, well, Anstis has to give him the space to cooperate. A sight Anstey would love to get involved, but he is effectively a lap down. And as these drivers battle on, well, meanwhile, we've had a big incident for Danny Phillips just behind him off camera. We'll get a replay of that when we can. Further down the order, meanwhile, Lorenzo Guajeto, he started all the way down in 33rd in what was the Pro Class. He's on the back of Mark Johnson. These two drivers have had two very different races, albeit they've both made progress. And as they make the way up the inside there of Frank Buyerson, who is a lap down after repair work to his car, well, I think they're just trying to work together for the mutual good of making some ground. And it is working for them, at least for now. But from towards the back of the field, we come back towards the front. And this is William Humphrey, the Vulcan Fastest by Glass Tech Racing, who right now has Hayden Miller trying to make a move on him, but the Aston Martin driver, they're getting a much better run. Going on through the bus stop chicane, and now as they make the way onto the banking, well, I think Miller and Modig there will both very gradually get closer and closer in the tow. And Humphrey at this point, well, he has got the distance slipstream to 1.8 seconds of Katonen, but it is going away from him because Katonen is all over the back of Lewis Kenyon. So therefore, Humphrey's going to have to do this the hard way right now, which is just get the better corner exits and hope that Corvette behind hasn't got the speed. Although Miller will be doing everything he can to get closer and closer. He's a bit far back that time to look for a move. We still do have 10 minutes left in this race. There's still a lot of time left, and there's still plenty of opportunities to do battle. It's all going to be a bit of a patience game, at least for now. But as it all continues to play out, well, with all the battles going on, still got some fighting going on as well. For even drivers who are lapped down, as that is a lever just ahead of Ross Young here. They may be fighting over 31st in the Pro Class and a lap down, but credit to them where it's due. They haven't given up from this race, and they're both still enjoying a little bit of scrap out there. Although Lever has got ahead recently of Young and is now trying to pull away. And meanwhile, these two drivers, Alex Frankwell and Danny Sidiers, they were involved in an incident only moments ago. In fact, they were not. They were involved in an incident early on, but they've had some damage to their cars, and Sidiers has been recently towed to the pits. Here's a pit replay to explain what's happened to Danny Sidiers. So this was the Simcoach driver in the 46, the Marlboro-sponsored machine, making its way through turn 5. Took too much curb. The rear of the car let go, and did he hold it together? And the answer was yes, he did. And as he brought it back onto the circuit, well, I think there, with the fact he run wide, something wasn't quite right with the car because it looked so it was going very slowly. And I think it's had to tow to the pits there due to something that's broken as a result of that. Then went braking in towards turn 7, and after that, well, it was a very slow trip on around. And in fact, next in the corner there in a 3 wide, well, how did he negotiate this? And the answer was he just went high. But he's had to go into pits after that, so I suspect something did break on the car. We had this just beforehand, going from one Danny to another. This was Danny Phillips, the Dexterous Motorsports Noir driver, battling with the 86 there of Matthew Jordan. Jordan snapping loose under braking in the yellow Ferrari, and Phillips being sent a long way to the tyre barrier. And at that point, there was no coming back. And that was Danny Phillips head onwards. And in fact, I have confused Danny Phillips and Danny Sidiers on terms of who came to the pits. It was Phillips who had to tow to the pits, not Sidiers. I do apologise, ladies and gentlemen, but that explains why we did have Danny Phillips in the end have to be towed. As we come back to live racing, this is Alex Fretwell right now for the RLH team, just holding on to what is 47th place. And we come back to your leader, Benedictus Sinkevicius, the Vulcan Motorsports driver in 188 right now, leading in control. And as he holds on to this lead by 1.6 seconds over teammate Lewis Kenyon, well, the top 3 have broken away from the rest of the field because they've got a 2-second gap to Hayden Miller. And Miller and Humphrey have swapped places off camera in the last lap. I suspect it's not over between them right now, but it might be a 1-2 for Vulcan Motorsports once again, albeit it'll be Sinkevicius this time taking that win, not Tseard Ploeg, who's all the way down towards the very back of the field in an instant that we haven't caught on camera, unfortunately. And I wonder if we might be able to catch it. He had to tow to the pits right at the start of the race before they even went green flag racing, so I think there was an issue with the car for the Acura driver, and that's why he's all the way down. Here he is, by the way, fighting at the moment with Menno Blom as he makes quick work of the Corvette driver in towards turns 2 and 3. I won't fight it too hard here, remembering that, of course, that both drivers are in a different class, and Blom will respect that and do the same as they make the way onwards. Well, right now, your Elite Championship leader coming into tonight. This is not the way to be leading coming out of tonight, although there is another race to go, but if he can go any further from 38th, he's got a long way to go if he wants to chase down that elite win, let alone it being overall. But up the road from them, we do have Mark De Vries here for SimRacing Team Lowlands in the all-yellow machine there, making his way on around. And as he comes on towards the bus stop chicane, he's fighting over 15th in the Pro class versus Matthew Bacon and Lorenzo Guajeto. Those two drivers still relatively close. As we look to your overall standings, although Guajeto, they're getting very tight to the rear of De Vries, in fact tapping the Corvette driver on the rear, and that almost sending the Dutchman sideways there. Such was the overspeed and the rate of the impact, I don't think either driver expected it. But on board we go Mark Johnson, who's at the back of this quartet, and as he heads onwards, well, right now in 18th place, can he find a way to pass the Lamborghini and the Mercedes and the Corvette in front of him? Well, the Aston Martin driver doesn't quite have the speed. Guajeto thinks he's got the speed to go around the outside, but I think there's going to be a bit of a myth here. As you'll see, Bacon will push De Vries along a bit, and Guajeto is actually going to lose out, as now Johnson will try and fill the space up. So in towards turn one they come, onto the brakes they all go. Oh my goodness, and that's De Vries coming loose. Was there further contact? That car's going to go straight to the barrier. There it goes, and the Dutchman there for SimRacing Team Lowlands in the end bounces off the barrier, and the car just rolls right now. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's going to be a tow to the pit shortly. And I think De Vries there, if there wasn't contact, then that's completely fouled on the brakes. Well, we'll get a replay of that when we can, but De Vries there went absolutely straight on, and absolute nightmare moment. He has had to tow to the pits, I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, as Matthew Bacon has got a black flag, and I believe there may have been some contact, or at the very least he has passed his instant point limit, and that means it's a drive-through penalty within the next 3 laps. Here's a quick replay of the incident. Made the run through, we ride on board the back here to Vries' car, and in fact the camera being taken off the car there by Bacon. Under braking, you could see it there. I think a bit of misanticipation on braking there from Bacon, the overspeed and the concertina effect not combining together well, and in the end Bacon's the rear of De Vries, and De Vries to the barrier, and whoa, goodness me, that's going to be a tough one, ladies and gentlemen, for both drivers. But back to your live racing we go, and as we do, 5 minutes left on the clock, and Bacon right now knowing he's got to relinquish that spot at some point. Guajeto will go low here and pass him. But further up the order, where there's a bit less contact at the moment at least, but coming into close contact, it's Harry Shaw and Nathan Anstis as they get ready to battle here down in towards turn of 1. Anstis looking around the outside. Meanwhile, it's going to be a potential battle between these two every step of the way. And well, right now it is going to be Anstis holding behind Harry Shaw. Shaw not able to find a way through, at least at the moment. I think it's going to be more of this before all is said and done. As Anstis and Shaw run nose to tail, and Katios is only 1.5 seconds up the road in that 3rd place for the Pro class. Also keep in mind that Thomas Pugh, the man in front of them, right now will be the beneficiary of a top 15 reverse grip pole position for race number 2. Should he be able to land his mark here, so Pugh right now, he will be smiling about this if he can hold on just that little bit longer. It's easy to say it one way, it may not be easy every step of the way, and that's what Pugh's going to be thinking to himself. It's all about just keeping in the run all the way up to this point and seeing what can be done at the very end. But as he chases after Katios, Nicholson and Van Rens, that's the fault for sure in Anstis right now, is the fact they may be fighting each other, but actually would it be better for them to focus on chasing down the man in front, and as a result perhaps fighting instead for what will be that pole position in the next race if they can catch it. That's the only caveats they need to think about. But onwards they come towards what will be the bus stop chicane, and from them we come back to Miller versus Humphrey, as these two drivers, well, they've been together all the way through this race, no doubt about it. There's still more to go between the two of them, and I wouldn't be surprised here if it is going to be a race that comes down to that very last lap. There's been nothing between them every step of the way as they make their way onto another tour of the circuit. And well, right now with what will be Modig behind, he rethinks himself that he can perhaps get a little bit involved here. It is going to be a bit of a challenge if he is going to be getting involved, just because right now we'll need to try and pick whether he's going to fight Humphrey or whether he's going to fight both of them. But fighting both of them, of course, well, that's far easier said than done. That's going to be an absolute certainty. So we will see what's going to come between those drivers as they get ready to head back onto the oval. Sweep their way on around. Well, meanwhile, we come back to Katios, who has actually found his way past Van Rens right recently. He's made his way on through, and I think Van Rens had a bit of a nightmare start to this lap. We have a quick replay to explain, because that wasn't caught on camera, but here it is. Well, this was Ross Young firstly making his way onwards. I don't think this was quite the replay footage, but he was making his way on down. And in fact, we do now actually get what happened between Ryan Nicholson and Wesley Van Rens firstly. And this was the split track esports driver making his way onwards in towards turn number 1. And, well, Van Rens went to the outside. Did Katios dive on the inside? Yes, he did. Had to fight with the front end of the car. And Van Rens in the end let the elite driver go, but in the process let his pro rival on through. Well, I think Van Rens in the end might have decided, you know what, third place in Pro Class is still worth a lot of points, but I do wonder if there's going to be a small voice in the back of his head that is just going to be simply saying, why did you let that one go as well? But then again, there's still a bit of time to go before this is all said and done, and so you never know, it might all be part of Van Rens' strategy here to be the third car in this running order and potentially swipe that place back before this is all said and done as he tries to go on the attack. As we look to class standings on the left-hand side of the screen to see how they all fit together here and who's going to finish where. Well, we're not too far away from what will be that final lap as our leader, Benedictus Sinkevicius, right now is on to lap number 17. I couldn't quite see the white flag, so I think we might be going one more after this one. It's going to be close. We'll see what the Vulcan Motorsports driver in his Lamborghini can do here, because unabated, he may just squeeze in what will be an 18th lap. And if so, well, then there's going to be some question marks, which is, has everybody prepared for an 18th lap, or did everybody presume it would only be 17 laps? And that's always something that can catch a driver out. As hold up the second, that's Tim Modig. The Sim Coach driver's into the barrier there coming out of turn number 5. He's gone straight into the wall, and what was looking to be an opportunity for at least the top 5, if not a third place in elite class, right now is going to fall even further and further as Wheeler and Tomlinson-Dennis take the place off him, and Mark Hutchinson's not too far behind. Here's the quick replay to explain. And this was the Sim Coach driver making his way into turn 5 in the top. Humphrey went into the left-hander, and as he did so, well, the rear of the car just started to step loose. Just a little bit too much steering. I can imagine worn down rear tyres, and the rear of the car just said no to him, and that will be absolutely gutting for what will be Tim Modi. He'll be fuming at that one. It's an easy mistake to make, but my goodness, is it a mistake that has proven extremely costly? As here is your leader right now, coming all the way around. He will head towards that timing line with 10 seconds left on the clock. I don't think there's going to be any more laps in this one, ladies and gentlemen. And for Benedictus Sinkevicius, it will be 17, and it's done. But for Vulcan Motorsports, it's going to be another win overall. But this time, it is Sinkevicius who takes victory here in the 188 Lamborghini, and it's a 1-2 for the team ahead of Lewis Kenyon, who finishes runner-up in the elite class ahead of Ville Katonen, who takes the pro win in third place overall. It will then be Hayden Miller who comes home in third for Vulcan Motorsports. He'll be pleased as punch with that, ahead of William Humphrey, who parks up immediately to get out the car. Ashley Kootman comes home in 6th, and a bit further back, your top 10 is completed by Danny Van Max Wheeler, Tomlinson-Dennis, and Mark Hutchinson. But Tim Modig takes 11th, and Fotis Katios will take the run-up spot in the pro class ahead of Ryan Nicholson, with Wesley Van Rens in the end taking 14th place ahead of Thomas Pugh, who will be your top 15 reverse grid pole sitter for race number 2. Nathan Anstice finishes in 17th, 5th in the pro class there, with a solid drive for the UK SimRacing Norris driver ahead of Nicholas Carlson, and then it will be James Howarth coming home in what will be 7th in class, 20th overall, and a solid drive through the field for him, with 21st going to Jack Wyborn ahead of Joe Sparrow. And well, ladies and gentlemen, as the rest of the field makes its way to the conclusion of this race, and we do see there Jesper Svensson parking up in 27th ahead of Matthew Jordan and also Peter Duke. And well, those drivers come to pause. We've still got a few more cars to finish this race, including Reece Saunders, when he cools things down in 37th place. The Altitude 3M esports driver just not having the race he wanted today, but he knew it would be a bit of an uphill battle in the Ford Mustang, head of Kyle Roy, who's also struggled here. He takes 20th place in the pro class, and that will give him some rather slender points. Remembering, of course, the pro points all the way down to 30th place in class. But with our last finishers on the lead lap, with the last one being none other than, I do believe, what was David Hutchison there in the Axis SimSports X Ford Mustang, and his race comes to a close. Well, as the circuit falls silent, ladies and gentlemen, we are just waiting for one or two more cars to finish the race. Well, we now transition into the warm-up period for the best part of 5 minutes, and let's give you a quick rundown of what was those race results, subject to any stewards' inquiries. So in the end, after an absolutely brilliant 30 minutes of racing, strategic racing at that, for round number 2 at the Daytona International Speedway for Split A's Season 11 Thursday GT3 Championship here at SimRacing International. And it was Benedictus Sinkevicius who took the win for Vulcan Motorsports and led home a 1-2 in the elite class and overall ahead of teammate Lewis Kenyon, who continues to be a bit of a bridesmaid. Veli Katonen took 3rd place, your pro class winner there, who started 2nd but in the end settled for 3rd. The Beowulf Racing Team driver doing exactly what he needed to do, finishing ahead of Hayden Miller for Vulcan Motorsports, who round off the elite podium. William Humphrey, therefore, taking 5th place for Vulcan Fasters by Glass Tech Racing, just behind, pipped to the post in the end, with Ashley Kirtland in 6th place for Relentless Racing, ahead of teammate Danny Van Oom, who recovered well after his incident with Milton Tomlinson-Dennis, but I suspect there might be a word in the stewards room between the two of them after the race. Max Wheeler took 8th place, ahead of Tomlinson-Dennis, and Tomlinson-Dennis doing everything he could to recover, but 9th place was the best he could achieve, but it does mean he starts further up the order for race number 2 shortly. Mark Hutchison completed your top 10 for Altitude Frame Esports, ahead of Tim Modig, with the Sim Coach driver 11th best of the rest. And then Fortis Katios was your runner-up in the pro class. Well done to him for a solid drive for Split Track Esports, ahead of his elite teammate of Ryan Nickerson. And in 3rd place in pro, it was Wesley Van Rens for 9 Pegasus Pantera Racing, focusing more on that podium finish and also getting himself the best possible start for race number 2. He'll be starting 2nd on that starting grid, and alongside him will be the pole sitter, who finished 15th in this race, Thomas Pugh for Axis in Sport X. We then did see 16th, Harry Shaw for Iron Apex Esports. Couldn't quite close the gap in the end as much as he wanted to. Finished 4 attempts behind Pugh at the end. He was just ahead of Nathan Anstis for the UK Sim Racing Norris driver, then ahead of Nicholas Carlson, Brandon Dyer and James Howarth, who completed that top 20. Outside that top 20, we then had Jack Wyborn ahead of Joe Sparrow, with Mike Barber finishing in 23rd place ahead of Robin Noel Brown. And it was Adam Baker for LS Racing, who found himself in a close-knit battle with Noel Brown and Fraser, and he landed himself right in the midst of it with that 25th. Jesper Svensson took 27th ahead of Matthew Jordan, with Peter Duke and Chris Jennings completing your top 30. And as we look further on down the order, ladies and gentlemen, we won't dwell on it for too much longer, as the class places are the most important ones. Emil Hasselar was 31st ahead of Lorenzo Cajeto, with Tseard Ploeg coming all the way from the back of the field to 33rd, knowing there's more to be done. But he was ahead of Jared Love, Menno Blom, Stephen Donnelly, Reece Saunders, Carl Roy, Jamie Bardwell and Wayne Douglas, with all of them completing your top 40. Outside the top 40, we could see on the lead lap, it was Matthew Bacon, Mark Johnson and David Hutchinson still to 43rd place. And it was a lap down to Burt Macklin, as it was for likes of Cy Anthony, Danny Cilliers, Alan Lever, Ross Young, Mikey Story and Frank Buerson. And then outside that top 50 as well, it was a lap down to Alex Fretwell and Mark DeVries, with unfortunate retirements for Danny Phillips, Ashley Brooks and Schubert Cardozo. Then to the class finishing positions, and starting with your elite class, of course, well, we got to see what was a win, and it wasn't just a win for one driver, it was a win for the team. It was a 1-2-3 for Vulcan Motorsports. Sinkevicius ahead of Kenyon and Miller. They'll be absolutely ecstatic about that. William Humphrey took home the 4th place in the end for Vulcan Fasters by Glass Tech Racing, ahead of Ashley Coutland for Relentless Racing, who managed to finish 7 seconds clear of his unfortunate teammate of Danny Van Oom. Then we saw Max Wheeler in 7th for Phoenix Racing Blue, splitting the two belligerents in that instant of Van Oom and Milton Tomlinson-Dennis, with Mark Hutchinson and Tim Modig completing the elite top 10. Ryan Nickerson took home what was 11th best of the rest ahead of Thomas Pugh, and your elite finishers were rounded out there by Brandon Dyer, Jack Wyborn, Mike Barber, Jesper Svensson, Emma Hasselar, Tseard Ploeg, and also what was none other than Danny Phillips, your retiree. In the pro class, meanwhile, what we got to see here was Veli Katonen take that win by 20 seconds, but it definitely was a huge, huge result. And what a result it was in the end, ahead of Fortis Katios of Split Track Esports and Wesley Van Rensden completing that podium. Outside the podium finishers, Harry Shaw in the end took 4th place, best of the rest really in this race, ahead of Nathan Anstis, with Nicholas Carlson ahead of James Howarth by 8 seconds, and there's a further 6 to Joe Sparrow. Robin Noel Brown and Adam Baker completed your top 10, with Liam Fraser falling 2 seconds behind in the end, and it was Matthew Jordan in 12th ahead of Peter Duke, with Chris Jennings and Lorenzo Gajeto completing the top 15. Your top 20 was rounded out by Jared Love, Menno Blom, Stephen Donnelly, Reece Saunders and Kyle Roy, and outside that top 20 it was Jamie Bardwell ahead of Wayne Douglas, with Matthew Bacon and Mark Johnson enjoying a bit of a fight ahead of David Hutchison. Burt Macklin, Cy Anthony, Danny Cilliers, Alan Lever and Ross Young completed the top 30, albeit with the last 5 a lap down. And there was a lap down for Frank Buerson as well, who was behind Mikey Story, with Alex Fretwell and Mark DeVries completing the finishing order on the road, and Ashley Brooks and Schubert Cardozo being your retirees. But that's a rundown of the results, ladies and gentlemen, from what was race number 1. And without further ado, it is time to make our way to the grid then for race number 2. So as the drivers make the way onto the grid once again, this is how they'll line up. On pole position, it is going to be none other than Thomas Pugh, who takes that pole with the top 15 inversion. He'll be joined on the front row by Wesley Van Rens, the pro pole sitter, and what a bit of symmetry compared to race 1, an elite pole sitter ahead of a pro pole sitter on the front row. That theme of split classes continues with the elite of Ryan Nickerson third, ahead of Fotis Katios, the pro, and then it will be an all-elite runs the rest of the end of the top 10, with Tim Modig ahead of Mark Hutchinson, and then Milton Tomlinson-Dennis and Max Wheeler together, with Danny Van and Ashley Coulton completing that top 10. Behind the relentless racing pair, it will be 11th place there to William Humphrey ahead of Hayden Miller, with Villa Katonen starting 13th place. What can he do from there? Can he make it back-to-back wins ahead of Lewis Kenyon? And then round off the top 15 inversion will be a race 1 winner overall of Benedictus Sinkevicius. In the Harry Shaw, it'll be a 16th there ahead of Nathan Anstis, with Nicholas Carlson in 18th ahead of Brandon Dyer and James Howarth. And outside that top 20 on the 11th row of the grid, it's Jack Wyborn ahead of Joe Sparrow, with Mike Barber and Robin Noel Brown on the 12th row ahead of Adam Baker and Liam Fraser. We then have none other than Jesper Svensson ahead of Matthew Jordan, with Peter Jute and Chris Jennings completing your top 30. And outside the top 30, it's 31st for Ime Hassalar, who continues to move forward through the field. The same there for Lorenzo Cajeto, 32nd. Heading of 17th row starters of none other than Tseard Ploeg and Jared Love. Then it will be Menno Blom and Stephen Donnelly on row 18 ahead of Reece Saunders and Kyle Roy, with Jamie Bardwell and none other than Wayne Douglas completing that top 40. Outside the top 40, 41st, it will be Matthew Bacon ahead of Mark Johnson, ahead of David Hutchison and none other than Burt Macklin, with Cy Anthony starting 45th ahead of Danny Cilliers. And then on row 24, it's Alan Lever and Ross Young. Completing your top 50, Mikey Story and Frank Buyerson, and then it will be Alex Fretwell and Mark DeVries on row 26, ahead of the final full row of Danny Phillips and Ashley Brooks. And last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, from the back of the field, it'll be a 55th place start for Schubert Cardozo. Well, that's how they all line up for this second and final race of the day, ladies and gentlemen, as they all make the way along. We're not too far away from going green flag racing for the final time today, but for Thomas Pugh, he's about to get us underway, and how will he do this second time around? Well, like that, Pugh goes, but Wesley Van Rens has gone before him, so Van Rens has gone early as they make the way down towards turn number 1, and as they do, well, Van Rens picks up a black flag. He was a bit too eager, and he goes straight on at turn 1. He's decided he's going to have to essentially toes to the back of the field, and well, that's a nightmare start there for Wesley Van Rens. We barely caught it on camera, but indeed, what a surprise, and not the way anyone wants it to go, so it's a free-for-all here, as Katios right now leads this race, and Ryan Nickerson looks to try and get involved as well, and he does. He gets ahead of Thomas Pugh, and right now Split Straight Esports see the madness that's going on and says, right, we need to capitalise on this. But as they head all the way onwards right now, these drivers are pushing themselves as much as possible, and will understandably here because there's been a big void opened up at the very top. But as they all tiptoe their way in towards turn number 6 right now, well, a bit of elbows out there between all the drivers. Further back, Nicholas Carlson there, enjoying what is a bit of a scrap versus Nathan Anstis. And well, as they fight their way side by side, these drivers right now absolutely pushing each other to the limit. But I wouldn't be surprised here if there's going to be a few mistakes before all is said and done. But further down the order, Robin Noel Brown, they're side by side with James Howarth as they come out of the corner. And right now, as they roar the way upwards, well, it's understandably one of the situations where, for at least the time being, I wouldn't be surprised if these drivers right now are all thinking they can flex a bit more muscle here early on before then settling down into what will be a running rhythm. We will have to see, as Menno Blom, meanwhile, he looks to chase after Stephen Donnelly, but he's got Wayne Douglas and Kyle Roy enjoying a bit of an exchange further back. And right now, well, Roy looking on the inside of Douglas under braking, as DC Motorsport privateer in the 66 in that Porsche. He's going in the outside to inside line, but that's not going to work for him at all there, as he'll just, in the end, follow his way all the way through. Still more to come as they fight even more so. So Douglas does get the better run as Roy there off the ideal line. Going high as Douglas has got that speed, but will it take him through to the lead of that fight? Well, we'll see, as meanwhile, on to lap 2 we go. And Fotis Katios right now goes high there, releases his teammate Nickerson ahead of him, and meanwhile Mark Hutchinson tries to follow through with him, and does so. Katios drops back down to 3rd, then it's Pugh ahead of Tomlinson-Dennis, followed by Modig, then we do have Wheeler ahead of Humphrey, followed by Van and then it's Kootman who completes your top 10. Outside the top 10 is Hayden Miller ahead of Lewis Kenyon, with Harry Shaw now, of course, promoted to 2nd place in the Pro Class as a result of the misfortune for Van Rens. Nicholas Carlson and Nathan Anstis right behind, and it is going to be a three-way fight there. Oh, as Anstis goes round in the rear of the picture, the Norris driver goes spinning on through the UK Race Norris car, and I think there that was power down too soon, and also a bit of contact perhaps, but we will get a replay of that when we can. But now Nicholas Carlson does slip past what was a bit of a banana skin battle there, and Joe Sparrow suddenly finds that his battle with James Howarth now is worth 4th place in the Pro class, not 5th anymore, as we'll have to wait and see where Nathan Anstis can get back into this one. As they make the way back out onto the oval banking here. Well, these drivers right now continuing to push each other as much as they can. But indeed, it is leading to quite a bit of confusion with regards to all the battling between them all right now. And, well, for Sparrow and the GT3 racing car, he'll be hoping he can steer clear of that confusion as much as possible and just push himself a bit further forward. As meanwhile, Tseard Ploeg, who was absolutely fuming, I do believe, because he expected there to be a warm-up session after what was qualifying and didn't realise went straight into race number 1. Well, he's already up into 24th place there as he dices his way up the inside of Matthew Jordan. His next target will be fellow elite driver of MA SLR, and right now the Vulcan Motorsports driver is absolutely flying after that gutting start to race number 1 where he didn't make it to the grid. And the 172 driver right now, he's definitely taking the accolade, which is not about how you start the day, it's about how you finish it, and he wants to finish it on the ultimate high wherever possible. But from him then, as he chases after Haslar, we ride on board with him for a brief moment into that draft and getting closer and closer little by little. And well, he's going to wipe the camera off the car there as he gets that close to the back of the Ferrari 296. And Ploeg right now looking one way then the other, as behind him Jordan and Baker are fighting each other literally left and right. But the number 91 trying to come them through, and the Ellison racing car right now can't find a way past the stalwart defence of that Ferrari 296. So he's going to have to wait his turn. As Menno Blom, meanwhile, continues to fight here with Carl Roy. The SimRacing Team Logan's drive finds himself ejected slightly out to the wide. He does reappear from the ether there in a brief order of time. And further back, we've got Mikey Story here enjoying a bit of a ding-dong battle with what is 2 Mercedes that are both missing front bumpers. And that's the Mercedes Ashley Brooks that comes and passes with a bit of an elbow there to Story. And Danny Sidier's right in front as Danny Phillips just watches on a bit further back. On through that hairpin right now, and wherever you go in this field right now, ladies and gentlemen, there's fighting everywhere, but that's also chaos and carnage there, as that's Fretwell going to the barrier, and joining him on that adventure, that was Burt Macklin. I think there's a bit more than meets the eye with regards to that one, but as they bring themselves back together, both drivers there ending up in arrears. Well, let's take a look back at what happened at the start of the race and some of the big incidents in the opening 3 laps, starting with that race start and what happened to Wesley Van Rens. So this was Van Rens getting ready to go, and we bring up the dashboard. I think we can. No, we can't, unfortunately. And as he just went there before what was his rival. I think Van Rens, in that situation, got a little bit too eager, immediately realised what he'd done at that point and backed off and went out wide. He decided just to yield straight away. Van Rens was just too eager to get going, but you can understand he wanted to because he thought this was a golden opportunity. We then had this a bit later on in towards turns 1 and 2 for Hayden Miller. Found himself there on the outside of a 3 wide. Now, did he cut over the apex to turn 2? Ooh, goodness me, no. He rode on the curb and in the end showed off his rallycross skill there to recover on the exit of turn 3 on the grass. He dropped some places, but Hayden Miller there, hats off to him. The Vulcan Motorsports driver could have ended up in the barrier, but he ended up battling side by side at the bottom end of the top 10 instead. We had this for Mikey Story, meanwhile, right towards the back of the field. This was coming in towards turn 1 as they all concertina together, and the Dexterous Motorsports Kumar driver here made his way nice and tight, so very safe there, and decided to take a bit of a skate road approach there for a brief moment with a car going off the road. That I think was, and they all went wrong in front of him, and all that caution once again being rewarded there as he found his way to the grass, as that was while our BMW's been ejected out very wide. I think that's Jamie Bardwell there who we said goodbye to for a brief moment. We then had this for none other than what was a bit further later on for Ross Young. And this was towards the end of lap 1. In fact, that was Young recovering there after it all went wrong in towards turn number 4. I think there's a bit more to it than meets the eye there, but we won't catch any more of that for now. But he had to tow to the pitch due to damage. And we had this for Alan Lever meanwhile. This was Lever coming out to turn number 7. Car parked in the barrier. That was Cy Anthony, his teammate for UK SimRacing Hamilton. And Lever met a similar fate going out to turn 7. The car coming loose there and dropping onto the apron. Villa Katona meanwhile had this happen to him into the bus stop chicane. This was your winner in Pro in race 1. Contact side by side there with the Vulcan Motorsports driver. Further contact there as he made his rounds round. I think that was Sinkadisius, and in the end the Beowulf Racing Team driver ended up spinning to the barrier and had to wait to rejoin, as I think the car might have been so damaged at that point he couldn't get going. And then we had this only moments to go on lap 2 for Steve Donnelly for JSD Racing. We'll come back to live after this, we promise you, ladies and gentlemen. And Donnelly under braking here, found a queue of cars in front of him, and a very bold move there from one of the SimRacing Team Lowland Corvette, and it sent the Irishman around and pointed in the wrong direction. With that, we go back to your live racing, and as we do, Well, there's still more to come, no doubt about it, as we look back to the bottom end of your top 15, particularly your 11th place runner, Ashley Coupland. And right now, the relentless racing driver in the 146, well, he is deciding at the moment just to stay right in the toe of the Audi there of Max Wheeler. No real progress being made at this point for Coupland, but understandably, I think his full process is purely going to be keep it together now, as that's a bit of a dive move there for none other than Danny Van Oom, who makes contact to Katios, and there's more contact from the relentless racing driver. Is his teammate Coupland taps in now on the exit of turn 7, and the Dutchman went all in for it, and he toes to the pit, knowing that his race now is backwards and it's not going to be put forward anytime soon. And the man he made contact there with Katios, well, both would argue two very different stories. Katios would argue that Van Oom came in too hot and tried to lunge him. Van Oom would argue the door was left open, he was able to make the overlap at the apex. And well, understandably, I think both drivers will have a bit of chat about that one after the race. I wonder if it will go to the stewards or not. But meanwhile, at the front of the field, from one split track esports car that's definitely in the thick of the fighting, there's one that's trying to run away from all the fighting at the moment. It is none other than Ryan Nickerson, who is trying to bring home his first podium of the season, if not his first overall and elite win with it. But as they head onwards, we say hello to Tim Perry there in the YouTube chat, who says pure chaos, and indeed you could summarise it at that at the moment. I think the chaos is going to now abate and calm down as they all come across that time in line for what is lap number 6 to begin. And Nixon right now finding that he's got what is the Aston Martin of Humphrey, trying to outbrake everybody in that outside line. He does, so does Humphrey, but the only problem is he's then got to go from outside to the inside of turn number 2. That's a much bigger circumference to turn through, and Tomlinson-Dennis now wants to try and come back at him as they batter their way out of the hairpin. And we ride on board here with your 192. So trying to get the power down here, all of these drivers, they're all looking at different lines, they're all poking and prodding and probing each other, and right now everybody wants to be the leader. The only problem is that Nickerson is really keeping all nicely bunched together at the front of the field. The split track esports driver, for all the pace that McLaren lacks on the straights and the banking, it's doing a fantastic job in the infield section of just making sure that nobody can really get an upper hand on him. And I think that's what split track esports have decided to do. If they can get the McLaren at the very front of the field, they think they've got the cornering abilities to really put a little bit of a plug in this group, and as long as they get a good exit, they may be safe, particularly when they've got that Ford Mustang and the Aston Martin behind them, which are shown today not to have the best top end speed even in the draft. However, as Tomlinson-Dennis right now, we continue to follow the 192 driver as he makes his way up towards what will be the bus stop chicane. Fourth in this order with Thomas Pugh 6 tenths behind. I think his game plan right now is just to wait, watch and listen. Pugh and Modig, meanwhile, they will follow with in that top 6. Starts to pull away a little bit from the pro leader of Katios, who in turn has a 3 tenths gap to Hayden Miller. But that's what's happening at the very front of the field. Further down the field, the man who end up in a bit of contact. Hold up, there's a car going to spin around. That's Wyborn. Wyborn's gone rolling off the bus stop chicane, and was the MRC 495 drive gets himself turned back around. I think he's going to be fuming. That's the second time we've seen that Ferrari point in the wrong direction today. First it was in the first sprint race, and now we've seen it again. And once he gets himself back together, he's going to be absolutely wondering where it all went wrong. But meanwhile, from where it went wrong for him, we come to the man who had it all go wrong before he even went green flag. And the Vulcan Motorsports driver right now, that Ploeg, on the charge here to try and find more places. And well, sometimes when the going goes bad, you've got to really put up your gloves and get ready to go battling. And the Acura driver here demonstrating the fact that he can go all in as he looks up the inside here of Howarth, and he's going to try and bring with him another Synchronicius here. The Vulcan Motorsports drivers are trying to come through together again. The idea being if they can do so, they can continue to work. But Howarth gets the better traction out of the horseshoe hairpin, and the Dexterous Motorsports Zemix driver right now is definitely putting this together. But we've had a big incident. In fact, we've had a very big incident here at the horseshoe hairpin, as I think Schubert Cardozo and also Jared Love have been caught up in the heat of it. Love has had to tow to the pit lane, and Cardozo's car is definitely looking worse away. That front bumper, I think, is going to come underneath the car very shortly. There it goes. It's dropping off right now, as we're going to see Wayne Douglas dive up the inside there, and we're trying to take the place back that his teammate lost to Cardozo. But I think they've lost a lot more, the pair of them, and that has released a number of cars on through. Here's a replay to explain. So this was Cardozo at the time for InterRacing team. I think behind him was Jared Love at the time. The Ferrari driver went up the inside, went all in under braking. Contact between the two of them. They both went spinning around, and at that point, where Wyborn was collected and everyone else had to go to the outside there for safety. That explains that Nathan Anstis got caught up, so did Danny Cilliers, Wayne Douglas to name a few. And then Jared Love had to tow immediately there after the damage picked up. Cardozo right now, I suspect, is going to try and continue on this race, but he managed to come into the pits because whilst he has not got the meatball flag to say that the car's in a state where it can't be raced, I would imagine he's going to be losing the best part of about 5 to 6 miles an hour at least on the banking, if not even more than that. And that's time you cannot afford to lose. So a fast repair might be the only way to get himself back into a state of progress, but will he be able to sacrifice it, given the fact he's going to lose all the places and lose so much time? It is a real difficult choice here right now for Cardozo, and something tells me he's going to try and carry on, but you can see already the speed he's losing here, as it's going to be a look on one side from Baker and the same for Cy Anthony as they look both ways. But as these drivers both come down to the braking zone, well, that's going to be Anthony right now on the inside there of Adam Baker, so he'll take back 23rd in the Pro class as a point. And now he's going to try and look for a move here on Cardozo, as we do see the Welshman making his way onto the anchors. And in the end, it's not going to quite work out, at least for now. We don't know what can come. He's definitely starting to feel the bit. But coming back to the top 10 of the Pro class. And here we do see Matthew Jordan's yellow Ferrari right now trying to keep Robin Noel Brown, Reece Saunders and Liam Fraser behind. And well, it definitely feels as though this is a potential run-in for Ford versus Ferrari, the sequel, albeit right now there's 2 Fords and 1 Ferrari here, so the number is a little bit imbalanced. But as they make the way on around here right now, it is going to be Noel Brown, who is the leader of the Fords, trying to chase down Jordan, and Howarth is 3 seconds up the road. So really this is the second Pro Pack right now, with the top 5 having gradually moved onwards in this race, and they're feeling a bit safe. But Noel Brown looks to the inside as we look to those class standings. Can he get the move done? The answer is no. As oh my good lord, Matthew Jordan there goes up into 2 wheels, and he picks up a slowdown for it. But I think also right now that was definitely one of the brown trousers moments here at Daytona today. Somehow the suspension of that Ferrari is still pointing straight. I think the 86 driver at this point will be thinking to himself, I can't afford to do that again, as the Fords both try to go high here, but that Ferrari is so strong outside the slipstream, and right now the Mustangs are struggling as they make their way onwards. You can see Saunders having to push Noel Brown past what is Jordan, and now he's going to use the rest of the overspeed here to try and go up the inside Noel Brown, and we'll get that done. The GPX SimSports Xenon driver's not going to fight this too hard, as meanwhile Liam Fraser tries to go around the outside of Jordan's Ferrari, but I do wonder whether it's got some suspension damage as a result of that. If it hasn't, I can tell you one thing, I'd love to know what Ferrari make that suspension out of there. As meanwhile, onto the brakes they go. The Midlands Racing Club driver fighting here with Jordan. Jordan comes back at him, and Matthew Jordan right now, well, if there was any sign of fear after that previous lap, he's not showing it as we go into the second half of the race, because right now Matthew Jordan is absolutely fighting at his very best. Chris Jennings, meanwhile, he's catching up after his miserable race number 1 where it all went wrong. Next to SimSport X driver has the very colourful Lamborghini of Lorenzo Gahetto behind him. And right now Gahetto's seeing what he can do as Fraser goes round. Fraser goes spinning to the grass on the apex of turn number 6. I think that might just be the low-speed traction of Mercedes, and particularly the amount of torque over its rear wheels in first or second gear catching him out. But Liam Fraser going all in, and in the end he's gone all around instead. As there comes Jamie Bardwell's BMW. That BMW has been here, there and everywhere today at Daytona. It's found just as much of the grass as the tarmac, and as soon as I say that, oh my goodness, I didn't mean it like that, Jamie. He goes around and he's right in the middle of the road. He pulls himself off the road immediately, and the Phoenix Racing red driver collects himself back together at the 62 right now. Wow, I can imagine Bardwell. He's going to be absolutely fuming. Just nothing is clicking together here at Daytona, and as a result, his day is going from good to bad to worse. He will now try to hold on to a spot inside the top 30 of the Pro class to guarantee himself some points. But meanwhile, whilst all this is going on, there's been a lot going on at the very front of the field in elite and overall, as William Humphrey now is your leader of what is the elite and overall categories, ahead of Mark Hutchinson and Milton Tomlinson-Dennis, with Ryan Nickerson having fallen back to 4th place in his McLaren. So they've been swapping around here off camera, but now Humphrey going defensive here versus Hutchinson, and it's intriguing to see we do have 6 different manufacturers in the top 6 spots right now. You could not make this up, and well, we are expecting, based on the balance performance and the pace we've seen, that this Porsche of Tim Mordig may have the straight line speed advantage eventually here, but right now it's got to try and pick its way past everybody, and nobody, I think at this point, is going to want to let a Porsche get to the front of this queue. But meanwhile, Thomas Pugh here has Lewis Kenyon try to look around the outside. Kenyon there completely overcooks his braking zone in towards turn number 6, and Pugh holds his ground as actually Coupland and Fortis Getters are being pulled back into this, and so is Max Wheeler. So at this point right now, we could have effectively an 11th place fight for what would be the win of this race overall, with not too long left in the race distance. And if so, well, I can tell you one thing right now, that is going to be absolutely sensational come the end of this, because it has been absolute madness so far, and I think there's even more madness to come, as William Humphrey makes his way down towards what will be the bus stop chicane. As he does so, well, Hutchinson and Tomlinson-Dennis here are really staying absolutely glued to the back of him, and Humphrey right now has just got to be thinking to himself one thing and one thing only, which is how can I keep them at bay? And indeed, I can see so many of you there giving in all comments with regards to the races so far, as we do also say hello there to none other than Petter Stagberg, who we do say hello to, and hope you're doing well, good sir. And also we say hello there to Tseard Ploeg, who says what is something to the contrary there with regards to the celebrations of race 1. But as that's the camera being practically wiped off the back of William Humphrey's car, the Vulcan Fasters by Glass Tip Racing driver here going high as Tomlinson-Dennis dives up the inside of one. Does he get both of them? He takes a bit of grass with it, but Tomlinson-Dennis goes for it right now. He tries to show Humphrey what you could do on the brakes, I could do as well, but Humphrey just beats him around the corner. But my goodness, was that close there. And Tomlinson-Dennis right now, well, he wants to try and prove that he can be just as brave on the brakes as the Aston Martin in front of him, as Mark Hutchinson meanwhile had to give the space to the end. And this top 3 fight, something tells me in the 12 minutes we've got left, it is going to intensify, and this is just the start of the storm. But meanwhile, Hayden Miller a second back now, where he has cleared Ryan Nicholson again, and he's trying to make progress towards that top 3. He would like to get involved in that, given the fact Vulcan Motorsports have no representation in that right now. Indeed, it's feel a bit odd if we didn't see a Vulcan Motorsports car battling for a podium spot, given that's the way it's been for the first 2 races of the season. But right now, the Corvette driver has still got a 1 second gap to close down, and then he's got to try and get involved. That's a lot easier said than done. Lewis Kenyon at the back of the group, meanwhile, currently running in 8th place overall in the lead. Well, he needs to go to try and pick his way past as well. But back to the front of it we go as Tomlinson-Dennis decides to go high here. And, well, this is going to be a drag race now. The battle of the 2 Mercedes V8s with a American V8 pushing one of them along. And that was a small tap there from Hutchinson to the back of Humphrey to push him ahead. But as Tomlinson-Dennis now completely scrambles his way for the bus stop chicane, that wasn't the cleanest run for the 192 driver. Well, understandably here, he's really having to balance this as Mark Hutchinson getting boxed in there, and Hayden Miller's been brought in. And now this has brought Miller into the fight. It has fully brought him in. This will bring Nicholson back into this now. We are suddenly going to see that top 3 that was breaking away now brought right back into the heart of all the madness that's unfolding as they make their way across that timeline. The Altitude Trim esports driver now, he's either got to defend or he's got to let this place go. And in the end, he's going to defend it versus the Vulcan Motorsports Corvette, and that's going to bring Nicholson closer. He's going to be molding closer. Hugh and Kenyon are there. Koopman's also getting close. And now, for Tiscatios the second behind, your pro leader is also going to get brought into this, and how long will it go? That's the problem, because when you look back, here's Harry Shaw, your second place pro runner, and overall wise, he's in 14th place with Sinkevicius right behind. Noah Carlson's with them. Could we have a top 16 now that's going to fight for the final 3 spots on the podium? Well, we'll have to see, because 10 minutes are left, and our top 16 right now is separated by no more in total than a grand total of about 7 seconds. It is all really heating up, and nobody really wants to work together anymore inside that lead group of 5 cars, whereas meanwhile, those further down do seem inclined to work together. So it's 2 opposite ends of the spectrum, the thought process. And meanwhile, the 2 very similar liveried Ford Mustangs here, but 2 different teams. That's none other than Altitude 3M Esports. Reece Saunders still keeping Noel Brown behind as they've started to leave Matthew Jordan in their wake. And Jordan is trying to make sure Jennings and Guahetto do not get closer to him. From them, we come back to Wayne Douglas in DC Motorsport Privateer 66. He's enjoying himself as he comes out to the corner and makes his way all around to the back of Ashley Brooks. Again, of course, Douglas is none other than the head of Douglas Motorsport, the Great British Formula 3 and Formula 4 team that many of you have seen race in real life. Indeed, the owner of the team there, a very proud owner, and the team's very great success on the real asphalt. And right now, Douglas trying to translate that here into the simulator. But around he comes, and as he does so on the back of Ashley Brooks, with Nathan Anstice just in front of them, they're fighting over 15th place in the pro class and some rather valuable points. But a slowdown penalty for Tim Modig towards the front. Well, he's going to drop down the order, as meanwhile, there's no dropping in the battling here between the top 2 as Humphrey and Tomlinson-Dennis go fighting again. Nicholson up the inside of Hayden Miller this time. So Nicholson now comes back into 4th place here. He's had a bit of a breather, and then he's decided, right, tag me back in. And Miller says, no, it's not your turn. He's got around the outside as, oh my goodness, Nicholson there almost clipping the rear quarter panel of Mark Hutchinson into the horseshoe hairpin. I think even Nicholson there might have scared himself a little bit. And now coming back towards what will be the second hairpin at this point. Nicholson and Miller are going to go fighting. And Hayden Miller here, I think he realises that as much as Nicholson is a quick driver, he's also, in Miller's eyes perhaps, a driver who's going to cost him some time, given the moves that Nicholson is trying to make. Ryan Nixon, of course, is being a fair mover as he goes defensive here, but Miller's realised it quickly already. The split straight esports driver, he's got his own agenda. He's not thinking about getting towards that leader. He's thinking about chasing a podium spot at the very most, although he'd love to win, but I think the split straight esports team are setting their sights or their barge that little bit lower to be a bit more realistic, whereas Miller, of course, he's got his head in only one place all the time, and that's not to belittle him. That is the top step of the podium. If he's not winning, then he's not trying hard enough, some would say. But as we look to William Humphrey, he's got Tomlinson-Dennis still with us. These two give each other breathing room in towards that break-ins over the bus stop chicane, but that top five right now, it segues apart, then it comes back together. And with Lewis Kenyon having that slowdown penalty, he's actually split the top 16 now, with your top five running away. And Kenyon, meanwhile, well, he's 2 seconds behind them and 6 tenths ahead of Thomas Pugh. As we see him there making his way a long way around. There's Pugh catching up to him gradually. As we looked at a wonderful long distance shot there behind the Sunoco barrier. And as they roar the way on towards the next lap, well, further back, here is Joe Sparrow, who's chasing after Nicholas Carlson, but Carlson is 4 seconds up the road if he wants that final spot on the pro podium. You can see it off in the distance there, and Short and Carlson are much closer together by comparison. And here they come down into turn one, and Shaw's done an absolutely fantastic job of this one so far in terms of maintaining his position and making sure he's not lost out to Lamborghini behind him, but he's still got a little bit more to go. And right now, well, Stinkvicius is offering him a wonderful slipstream in front with Brandon Dyer as well, but if they should pull away, Sonny Carlson might start to get the upper hand in this battle for what will be the second and third spots of the pro podium, but we'll see which way it plays out. Further down the order, we do have Danny Siliers and Schuber Cardozo, both in cars that are missing pieces on them, as that's a car round. That's Adam Baker who's had a spin. Baker tries to get himself back together, and well, I think that's a classic too much of the rear end coming loose at turn one spin for Baker. But meanwhile, Cardozo and Siliers will gain that place on Baker in the pro class. Now it's the fight for the 19th place spot rather than 20th. Cardozo chasing after Mike Barber and hoping he can stay with the elite Ford Mustang driver to give himself a little bit more speed. Up further behind them, Peter Duke behind Baker now. He's been gifted the opportunity to attack what is the Mercedes in front of him, but he's trying to keep ahead of Mikey Story and Mark De Vries, who are there with him as they will come down towards the second hairpin. And as they do, oh, there's a car going across the road there. That's Cy Anthony. Oh, and Peter Duke hits through Adam Baker, I think blindsided by seeing the Porsche coming across the road. Well, Adam Baker right now finds himself ejected out of the road from contact by Peter Duke's Corvette. And as Duke loses front bumper there, you can see it hanging loose. There's going to be contact in the back of him from Mark De Vries here. They're all getting a bit clumsy towards the end of this one. I wonder if they're worn out right now, just simply because these have been some very hot races, not just in terms of the temperatures on circuit, but also the heat of the action. The mistakes were made, and in the end, Mikey Story will gain all 3 places of the price of the madness that was going on, as Mark De Vries will go around the outside of Peter Duke, who is struggling onwards. But leaving them for a moment, we come back to your 2 leaders as they fight 2 wide. Returns 1, 2, 3, and into 4 they go. And Tomlinson-Dennis this time try to look all the way around the outside of the hairpin versus Humphrey, and they are not giving in either of them right now. As Tomlinson-Dennis, we ride on board that front bumper, and well, running all the way over the back there of the Aston Martin V8 Vantage Evo machine of Humphrey. Right now, what can he do to get ahead of this man? He seems to be throwing everything at this bar of the kitchen sink, and right now nothing is quite landing. He's missing that final 5%. As the sparks fly there from the under tray of Humphrey's Aston Martin with the inconsistent surface of the road, and as they come in towards turn 7, well, the next part of the story is going to be that as they make the lines to the banking, gap is 3 tenths, 2 very different exit lines there. Tomlinson-Dennis were a much tighter exit, really sets himself up to be in the tow. Humphrey, meanwhile, lets the car roll all the way out towards the barrier there. He feels more comfortable in doing so, but of course he needs to, because he needs to carry more speed onto this straight as not to be open to a move here from the St Vincent driver. As they come down towards what will be at the bus stop chicane, onto the brakes. Tomlinson-Dennis again can't find a way through, as Hayden Miller has got ahead of Hutchinson and Nickerson quite recently. He has finally found his way through, and he's into 3rd. Now he's a second behind the leaders. Can he get involved with the time remaining? I don't know if he can, but what we can very quickly do is take a look back to Nickerson and Hutchinson, who are swapping their own places here as they make the way down towards another lap. 2 more to go, and Ryan Nickerson there gets ahead of Hutchinson, who immediately lets him get ahead, so that way he can get the draft to get back ahead of him by turn 1, alternatively give him a little bit of a push along. But in turn one, then our leaders come, and here they roll onto the brakes. Humphrey this time decides to go all the way to the outside. Tomlinson-Dennis follows him, and Miller still a second behind as they exit the corner. I wonder if there's going to be a bit of a mutual truce between these two drivers for what will be just simply this lap. And the idea being they don't want Miller getting any closer until the final lap, which is where they'll do battle. So I think it is going to be a brief pause. They'll both regroup, and then they'll decide, right, for the last time, they're going to go all in on this. But we will see, as meanwhile, a black flag for Sinkovicius has seen him come to the pit lane for a drive-through penalty. That's for instant points. We believe that's due to a contact with another car that sent him over the instant point count. We're going to stay transfixed to lead battles, at least for now, ladies and gentlemen, as we are heading towards what will be the precipice of the fighting here. And indeed, it could be one big final crescendo in the fight for the elite and overall win. In terms of the battles for the pro class, they have all calmed down now. Fortis Gatios leads the class by 2 seconds over Harry Shaw, with Nicholas Carlson a further 4 seconds back. We are keeping an eye on it just in case, but otherwise it is this battle that is going to take centre stage. As Tomlinson-Dennis gets closed, Humphrey manages to make his way to the normal racing line. They are working together this time, but Hayden Miller behind. You can see him there. He wants to get closer, as does Nickerson, as does Hutchinson and Kenyon. They are all right now hoping that they're all going to fight. And understandably, if you are Tomlinson-Dennis, the best place to be going on to that final lap is to be second place, because the idea is you'll get the tow and you can choose when you want to try and slipstream your way past. But Humphrey knows that. They all know it, to be fair, these elite drivers. And as they make their way onwards, oh well, Tim Perry saying the same there. The best place to be on the last lap is in second. But here we go, ladies and gentlemen. One last tour of the Daytona road course. Humphrey versus Tomlinson-Dennis right at the front. When will the move come? If it does come, Humphrey defends hard, but a little bit of oversteer there coming out turn one. Tomlinson-Dennis immediately now all over the back of him here as they come down towards Horseshoe. But he immediately goes outside, switches back to the inside. Humphrey tries to cover him off there, and Tomlinson-Dennis right now does get there's a small tap between the two of them. The door opens, so Tomlinson-Dennis gets ahead. Humphrey meanwhile backs off and falls back in behind right now as we ride aboard the dashboard of the 198. Now has Humphrey let this go intentionally? Is the idea here that he's going to be able to outdrag that Mercedes when he gets to the banking? Well, it's a risky call, but there's a confidence level, I think, in Humphrey here that we've got to consider. He had all the confidence to be bold on the brakes at the Sachsenring, and here today I think he's got the confidence to think he can outdrag the fellow Mercedes power plant machine as he makes his way onto the banking. So here they go then. It's this, the bus stop chicane, and one last drag race all the way to the finish line. And as they power the way along right now, well, Humphrey falling back, 3 tenths is the gap, but we know how quick he can be through the bus stop. We know that Tomlinson-Dennis can do so as well. They'll both need perfection here to chase down their aspirations of winning this race. And with Hayden Miller now 6 tenths behind, he's a little bit too far back at this point. But for Tomlinson-Dennis, he's got to be absolutely perfect at this point. He can't afford to make a single mistake as they make their way through. But they're close here. But is Humphrey too close? Has he arrived on the scene too soon as they power the way onwards here? Because the clock comes down to 0. Well, Humphrey right now is backed off slightly. He knows it's too early. He can't go yet. He's got to wait. But how long do you wait? How long do you give Tomlinson-Dennis the run of the lead of this race? Well, here they come, ladies and gentlemen. Here comes the overspeed. Humphrey's going to go high. Is he going to have enough? It's going to be a drag race to the line. It's going to be a photo finish. And as they rub doors, it is Tomlinson-Dennis who just takes the win by 2 thousandths at the line. Ahead of William Humphrey and Hayden Miller. Ryan Nixon takes fourth ahead of Mark Hutchinson. And it'll be Lewis Kenyon, Tseard Ploeg, Thomas Pugh, Tim Modic and Max Wheeler who complete your top 10. Fortis Gatios will take his first win in his time here in the GT3 Championship in the Pro class. Well done to him. Ahead of Harry Shaw and Nicholas Carlson who complete your top 3 in Pro. There'll be Joe Sparrow who rounds off the top 15 ahead of Reece Saunders. And then it will be none other than Robin Noel Brown who comes home in 17th place. We've got more cars coming through, including Jack Wyborn in the end, who just misses out versus Danny Phillips at the line to the tune of 8 thousandths. And it'll be David Hutchison behind them with Mark Johnson, Nathan Anstis and Liam Fraser rounding off that running order to 14th and 15th in the Pro class ahead of Wayne Douglas who ran off your top 30. And then even more drives to come here, including Mikey Story, who then couldn't find an answer to Jamie Bardwell's BMW at the end. But as we see Matthew Bacon calling things down as well, as he rolls his way to a stop. St. Anthony just behind him, and indeed, what a race it's been for so many of these drivers, ladies and gentlemen. They all deserve a round of applause as they head towards that finish line. For Schubert Cardozo today, it's been a frustrating day, battling hard, but in the end, Instance have really played his races. He takes 39th ahead of Wesley Van Vrens, and for Van Vrens, well, you've got to feel for the 9 Pegasus Pantera racing driver because he started in second overall, but he went too soon. He got black flagged for going too soon, and the Dutchman in the end had to do it all from the back of the field. And it was a golden opportunity which just slipped out of his hands. But as things cool on down between all of our drivers, and what a pair of races, ladies and gentlemen. And this man, well, he savours what has been an incredible win. A win by 2 thousandths at the finish line over William Humphrey. He picked the right time to take the lead, and Humphrey just picked slightly too late to try and come back at him in the toe. The Mercedes just willing itself on to victory for Milton Tomlinson-Dennis. He will finally enjoy the taste of being on the top step here at Daytona. But here are the race results, ladies and gentlemen, subject to any stewards' inquiries. And as we can see, after an incredible 30 minutes of racing and our second of our 2 sprint races for round number 2 of season 11 of the Thursday GT3 Championship at SimRacing International in Split A, it was Milton Tomlinson-Dennis who took the second victory of the day for World of Racing with Tseard Esports, and behind him it was William Humphrey, the runner-up there. And well, our time tower said it was 2 thousandths, the results say it was 8 thousandths. It was somewhere in that space, but in the end you could not have asked for a closer finish, and 4 tenths behind, Hayden Miller round off that podium there for Vulcan Motorsports. Ryan Nickerson took 4th place then for SimRacing Esports, looking strong in the early stage of the race, but after being passed by the top 3 couldn't quite come back, and I suspect may have used a bit too much of his tyre life in the early stages, which meant that whilst he didn't have the pace on what was the banking, he also started to naturally lose the pace in the infield. Mark Hutchison took 5th place there for Altitude 3 Esports ahead of Lewis Kenyon, with the Vulcan Motorsports driver ahead of his teammate Tseard Ploeg, who came all the way over the course of today from the very back of the field through to what was a 7th place finish. So some good points recovered there for the Dutchman, ahead of Thomas Pugh with the Access Sport Extra, followed up by Sim Coaches Tim Modig and Phoenix Racing Blues Max Wheeler, and that was your top 10. Behind the Audi driver, it was Brandon Dye in 11th, best of the rest for Inter Racing Team, ahead of Fortis Katios, and he did take in the end what was the win in the Pro Class, his first win in his time in this series, and I'm so happy to see that for him. The McLaren driver, Splitstrack Esports, who was gutted not to take the win last time out, was the Sachsenring when he had that spin from the lead. Harry Shaw took the runner-up spot in the Pro Class with an absolutely brilliant drive for Iron Apex Esports. The Lamborghini driver bringing home a 2-3 ahead of his fellow manufacturer counterpart from Beowulf Racing Team of Nicholas Carlson. Joe Sparrow rounded off the top 15 there, 4th in the Pro Class, JSD Racing, 3 seconds ahead of Reece Saunders, with the Altitude 3M Esports driver making more gradual progress in this one, ahead of Robin Noel Brown. Matthew Jordan, Chris Jennings and Lorenzo Guajetto completed your top 20. And we won't dwell too much further on the overall finishing positions, ladies and gentlemen, just because, of course, it's where in the classes the points are awarded. But we could see there, round off your top 30, it was the run of Menno Bloem, Emma Hesselaar, James Howarth, Danny Phillips, Jack Wyborn, David Hutchison, and also Mark Johnson, Nathan Anstis, Liam Fraser and Wayne Douglas. And commiserations there to what was Jack Wyborn for a second spin of the day for the MRC 495 driver, really torpedoing his chances of finishing inside the top 15. Outside the top 30, it was there to Danny Cilliers, who got himself back on the road in the end after a difficult end to the sprint race, ahead of Mike Barber, with Jamie Bardwell, Mikey Story and Mark De Vries enjoying a good little battle towards the end. Matthew Bacon was not too far behind it, ahead of Cy Anthony, whose late instant cost him dear. And there was Jesper Svensson ahead of Schubert Cardozo and Wesley Van Rens. Outside that top 40, we then did have none other than what was Benedictus Sinkevicius, with that drive-through penalty relegating to a 41st place finish, ahead of Peter Duke. And there was a lap down to Adam Baker and Frank Buyerson, ahead of 2 laps down for Ashley Coutland and 4 laps down for Alan Lever, Ashley Brooks and Ross Young. It was retirement sadly for Stephen Donnelly and Jared Love, and we also did receive retirements for none other than Danny Van Cole Roy, Alex Fratwell, Bert Macklin and Villa Katonen. But as for your class finishing positions, here's where the points go. And as we can see, in the elite class, Milton Tomlinson-Dennis finally takes his first win of the season for World of Racing with Tseard Esports, ahead of Vulcan Fasters by Glasstep Racing's William Humphrey, and Hayden Miller in the end couldn't quite make it the win, but guaranteed himself on the podium there, the Scotsman. Ryan Nickerson takes his best result of the season at 4th place ahead of Mark Hutchinson, who also secures a season best so far. And then it was Lewis Kenyon ahead of Tseard Ploeg, with Thomas Pugh, Tim Modig and Max Wheeler completing that top 10. And Wheeler definitely showing the Audi's got a bit of pace here at Daytona for Phoenix Racing Blue. Brandon Dyer took 11th, best of the rest ahead of Emma Hesselaar, who did well to push forward for Heracles' performance, ahead of Danny Phillips, with Jack Wyburn and Mike Barber completing the elite top 15, which is where all the points get awarded to. And sadly, it was no points today for Jesper Svensson, nor Benedictus Sinkevicius, or Ashley Coutland and Danny Van in race number 2. Then come into the Pro class, last but by no means least. And as we can see, Fotis Katios in the end for Splitstrack Esports, taking the win by 1.3 seconds over Iron Apex Esports' Harry Shaw. Nicholas Carlson was a further 4 seconds behind in the end after running on the back of Shaw for some time, but the Beowulf Racing Team driver dropped back, but he still secured his podium just ahead of Joe Sparrow, who was 4 tenths behind at the finish line for JSD Racing. Reece Saunders finished in 5th there for Altitude 3M Esports, and what a way to come through the field in the second race to finish inside that top 5 after the difficulties of race 1. Robin Noel Brown was just behind in there for GPX Sinsport Xenon, and 5 seconds clear of Matthew Jordan. It was then Chris Jennings for Axis Sinsport X, who enjoyed a good battle with Lorenzo Gohetto and was never passed by the Italian but had him close, and the Virtual Racing Team driver headed off what was a 9th place finish, Hidameno Blome, who completed your top 10. The SimRacing Team Lowlands drive gave way to James Howarth, who was best dressed in 11th, and then it was David Hutchison ahead of Mark Johnson, with Nathan Anstis and Liam Fraser completing that top 15, with all those drivers having a degree of difficulty. Same could be said for Wayne Douglas, who in the end did end on a high, with some points being scored for DC Motorsport ahead of Danny Cilliers, with Jamie Bardwell, Mikey Story and Mark DeVries completing that top 20. And outside the top 20, ladies and gentlemen, well, Matthew Bacon finished 21st. It was not his day today, nor was it for Cy Anthony, ahead of Schubert Cardozo, Wesley Van Rens and Peter Duke. And it was a lap down to Adam Baker, as it was to Frank Buyerson, with Alan Lever, Ashley Brooks and Ross Young taking the final finishing points. Outside that top 30, not scoring any points in this one, it was Stephen Donnelly and also other retirees, including Jared Love, Kyle Roy, Alex Fretwell, Bert Macklin and Villa Katonen. Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our rundown of the provisional race results. And whilst the proceedings do go silent here at Daytona and the crowds gradually disperse, don't you worry, because this broadcast isn't going silent for too long. We are going to be back in approximately what will be 5 minutes' time for our post-round interviews. But as we leave you, be sure to let us know in the YouTube chat what you've enjoyed most from tonight's races at Daytona. And so, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for us to kick off our post-round interviews for this evening. And we do apologise for a slight delay. Unfortunately, he was having some technical issues, but we wanted to bring you an interview of him first, because joining me now in the interview room is none other than the man who's known to many as MTD. It's Milton Tomlinson-Dennis. Good evening to you, Milton. At long last, you've finally taken that first win of the season. You must be absolutely pleased.
Yeah, I am. It was a tough race, especially after race one. With the contact and the spin, but yeah, race two seemed to be, battles all the way through from start to finish, and yeah, just about nicked it at the end.
Oh, goodness me. Well, two very different races in the end, although in both of them you were right in the thick of the fighting. But before we come into the races, let's talk a little bit about qualifying. Now, qualifying at Daytona, perhaps not as critical as other circuits. So long as you're in the top 10, you qualified 8th on the overall grid. Was that where you were expecting to be, all things considered?
Yeah, once I started seeing people, towing each other, you got a few teammates in there, so they're obviously helping each other out. My lap, I ended up getting in with no slipstream. I was about 3 tenths up on another lap, and dreaded bus stop, managed to bin it in the first part of that. So yeah, my fastest lap I didn't get in, but as you say, it's not as crucial to qualify high in Daytona, as long as you're somewhere in the top 10.
Well, that's impressive still to do it without the slipstream or a dedicated tow. And going from there, race one, we saw you immediately go on the attack and start to make your way forward. You're intermingling all the way to the end with a number of drivers, including William Humphrey and the Vulcan Motorsports drivers. But what went wrong at the end?
What's that, in race one or race two? Sorry.
Race one.
Race one. So I think I had Van Oom behind me going into T1. And we had a pro driver who was just in front of me, who was in third on the track. So I was trying to get past him, but he slowed up a little bit too much into T1, and I think that caught out Van Oom behind. So yeah, he just went into the back of me and dropped places from there, as everyone's all bunched, all tightly bunched.
Oh, indeed. An unfortunate one at turn one, but still, the flip side of the coin being, and this is testament to yourself, the way you got yourself turned back around straight away. I mean, yourself and Van Oom also, I think, looked at each other out the other side of the car and saying, no, after you, sir, no, after you. But the fact you both got racing again and to finish still inside the top 10, I mean, you must have thought to yourself, after you cooled down a little bit, actually, you know what, this isn't bad, and I'm starting in 7th place for race number 2.
I think that's what helped was the fact, that you got the reverse grid in the second race. So I just focused attention on that, try and keep my nose out of trouble towards the end of the race, end of race one. So, you don't fall outside of that. I think it's top 14 or 15 for the reverse. So yeah, it was just about focusing on that and yeah, doing better in the second race.
Now let's talk about that second race, because of course, at Sachsenring, we saw you put yourself right towards the front of the field, and you battled quite hard with a man who you'd end up battling with quite hard today, none other than William Humphrey. But to get to the lead of the race, you first had to make your way through the field, but you didn't waste any time doing so. In fact, we even saw in some of the replay footage just a moment ago, you had a habit of putting the car on 2 wheels for the bus stop chicane. You do realise it's got 4 wheels, not 2. It's not a motorbike.
Yeah, it's a lot harder to, the new bus stop's hard anyways, and then going through it underneath another wing, yeah, it makes it a little bit more tricky. So yeah, a few laps in a row I was taking the wrong line, nearly lost it a few times actually, coming out of it. So yeah, was lucky it was just 2 wheels and not into the wall.
Well, lucky still, but at the same time as well, you kept things under control, and we did see a bit of back and forth fighting between yourself and the likes of what was, say, Mark Hutchinson and company. But towards the end, it really did boil down to just 2 drivers, yourself and William Humphrey, and I get the feeling you weren't going to let him go this time, not after Sachsenring.
No, I don't think so, no. I wanted to make up for Sachsenring, that was a bad pit stop and race strategy. Lost a lot of ground to the front 3 in that race. This one I felt I had a little bit of the edge, but you can never know because the draft is quite powerful, going across the 2 straights. So I thought I could maybe make a break for it if I got in front, but he definitely defended well.
And just on that, of course, because on the last lap, sometimes it's better to be the second place car than the lead car. Were you a bit surprised, perhaps, at the fact you were able to take the lead in the infield section? Because we saw the 2 of you battle side by side into turn 4, and then you were leading for the rest of it. Was that the way you wanted it to play out?
No, so going into turn 4, I saw him take the inside line, and then in the braking zone, he sort of started drifting out to take the normal line, and that's when I changed and I thought, you know what, maybe I could just put a little nose in on the inside as long as I made the apex, which I did, and then yeah, was hoping that I could have enough of a gap to get across first over the line.
Oh, and it was just enough gap at the end. Although, I mean, you must have been absolutely sweating as you got close to that finish line. It was going from tenths to hundredths to then only, I believe, as our time tower said it, 2,000ths at the finish line. I mean, did you think you'd won it? Did you think you lost it? When did you know?
I think no, I thought I lost it. I saw him catching up pretty quick. He had a very good bus stop, and I said, "Oh no, he's going to be right on me coming up to the line." And I wanted to. Normally, if you're taking the normal racing line, you'd hug right onto the apron, but I thought I'd drift up slightly just to make sure that he took a little longer line to get to the start finish line. There was a little bit of contact, but nothing too taxing, I would say, with the contact. I think it's just two cars coming together, and yeah, just about managed to get over the line first.
Well, it was an incredible conclusion. I can tell you one thing. All those in the YouTube chat cheering you on were absolutely over the moon. And, well, I think everyone could believe it at the finish line. But your first win is finally on the board. I mean, it must be a big relief. But now, is this the start of more wins to come when we head to Algarve next week?
We hope so. You know, there's quick drivers here all the way through the field, and some tracks suit cars better than other tracks. The Merc's a little bit of a boat and traction limited, so Algarve I'm not expecting to be right at the front, but we'll try our hardest and see what we can do.
Oh, we look forward to seeing you give it your all at Algarve in a week's time and see if you can put that Mercedes on the top step again. But just before I let you go, Milton, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to on the broadcast?
Well, I give a thank to yourself for what I assume will be another spectacular broadcasting effort from yourself. So thank you for that, and yeah, just the people that were watching me and cheering me on in the chat, and obviously the wife as well cheering me on in there. So yeah, that's all I want to say.
Oh, brilliant. Well, I'm so happy that you've got your supporters, and indeed you've been able to achieve something special for yourself. And then today, Milton, congratulations on the win in race number 2. Race 1 might not have been perfect, but you've definitely ended on a perfect note, and we will see you at Algarve to see where you can follow it up. Until then, my friend, have a great rest of your evening.
Cheers, mate. Have a good evening. Take care.
So hearing there from Milton Tomlinson-Dennis, ladies and gentlemen, you can hear it in his voice. I think there's been a sort of a moment where he's hit a bit of a trough after what happened in race 1, and he mentioned there the fact that on reflection, because of the top 15 inversion for the grid for race number 2, I think very quickly he's gone from red mist mode to actually, you know what, it's not as bad. I can win race number 2. And that's what you've got to do. You've got to pick yourself up so quickly. And that's why he's won race number 2 here. Not just because of the fact he's in the tow, being smart of it, battling with William Humphrey, but because he hasn't given up in these races. And that is why this world of racing with STR Mercedes driver is going to be so strong over the season. We've seen it here today. His resilience and his ability to improvise on the fly. And intriguingly there, mentioned as well the fact that when Humphrey did change up his line going into the hairpin on the final lap, he decided to roll with the idea of actually being the leader when normally you want to be car number 2 on that final lap. So for Tomlinson-Dennis, it's definitely been a day today where it's been an experience that's been up and down, but in the end he's definitely going to feel as though he's on cloud 9. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to another interview very shortly. Who's it going to be with? Well, we'll shortly find out. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we've already had an interview with our man who won today. So we should have an interview then with the man who came second in race number 2. He joins me now, the other side of the elite coin. It is William Humphrey. Will, it's great to have you join me this evening, and what a day it's been for yourself. Much like the man we just spoke to, Milton Tomlinson-Dennis, it's all been about fighting right at the front, although you couldn't quite make it a win today, but you came close. How do you feel, good sir?
Mixed feelings, to be honest. Happy with my pace in race 2 and a bit in race 1. Not too happy with the end, but I guess we'll take B2.
Well, may not have been the perfect end to the day, but still plenty of positives out there here at Daytona. Firstly, qualifying, 12th overall, albeit I suspect, much like our driver we just spoke to, a bit of a session whereby it was just about getting yourself towards the front of the order rather than worrying about being on the front row.
Qualifying was an absolute mess, to be honest. Especially just finding somebody to equal your pace-ish that you can draft with. But yeah, it was a lot about just getting near the front of the order and just making your way up there like that.
Well, in the end, couldn't quite find someone to work with necessarily, but you got yourself there. And let's talk a little bit about race one. You very quickly started to carve your way through the field, and by the end of it, 5th overall, 4th in class. Some great progress there, but some fierce fighting as well.
Yeah, some nice fighting tonight, to be fair, for most drivers. It's definitely fierce, to say the least. Definitely made some risky moves. Yeah, it's actually quite a decent race in terms of fighting, to be honest. Quite enjoyed it.
All fair play. And I do have to ask, the Aston Martin, of course, we saw at the Sachsenring how well you could use the brakes of the car. We saw even more of that here today in both races. But what was it like on the straights and the slipstream? Because it seemed a bit slow at first, but it did pick up quite a bit of speed over time.
Yeah, I think I just got more used to it. I made a quick setup change before race one, and it kind of helped me a little bit. But I think it was just getting used to that, either getting used to that change or just getting used to the track conditions and how everything was playing out. That helped me out in race two. I was thinking I was just a bit more aggressive in race two, which actually worked out a little bit better for the car.
And just on that, obviously with the change and being a bit more aggressive, you started in what would have been 11th place based on the grid inversion, but you very quickly made your way all the way through to the front. Did you find it a bit of an odd scramble, particularly with having McLarens at the front of the field that didn't have the speed on the straights, but had all the speed in the infield section?
No, because but it was great fun. I wouldn't say it was bad. I can't remember what you said, to be honest. It was great fun. I did enjoy the battling in the infield with the McLarens and the Mustang. I made a really nice move around the outside of the Mustang, I think it was, T5. But I did enjoy it because that's kind of how I set up my car as well, for the infield, better for the oval. But yeah, it was good racing. The McLaren I was fighting was a bit feisty, very, very good at defending, but I managed to make it work and kept people on for a while.
Oh, indeed. And then, of course, we do have to talk about it a little bit. The battle between yourself and Tomlinson-Dennis on the final couple of laps. The two of you literally were, I don't think, separated them more than by 3 tenths over the final 4 laps. But in the end, it just didn't quite work out. What was the approach you planned to take?
It was exactly what I did. Get a better exit off the butt stop, get the better speed over the straight, and then go around the outside, because I knew he was going to stick the inside. I just didn't expect him to... Well, I expected him to push me up to the top of the racetrack, as I should do, but I didn't expect him to make contact with me and slow me down.
Well, it was unfortunate, and in the end, just missing out by thousandths of a second, but still some big points gained today for yourself, a 4th and a 2nd in the elite class. You're going to be moving to the top of the championship standings, I do believe.
I'm happy with that.
Well, got to be happy with that. And when we head to Algarve, will it be a situation whereby you can use that Aston Martin to put you right at the front? Because it's going to be a feature race. There's no slipstream anymore. It's all about getting things done in Portugal.
Never really been going too well around Algarve from what I remember, but I'll definitely try and I'll see what I can do. I'm glad it's not a slipstream fest like it was here, because qualifying will actually be useful. And I don't know if it's wet or not. I can't remember if it's the first race where it's wet, and I haven't really driven the Aston wet, so that'll be interesting as well.
Well, indeed, it's a good point. It will be a mixed conditions race, so that might be a bit of an experience for you to get ready for. Of course, there's no guarantee of rain, but just as we get ready to let you go, Will, of course, one final question as always is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to on the broadcast?
Yeah, I'd like to give a massive shout out to everybody at SRI, everybody who's created this event. I'd like to give a massive shout out to my girlfriend as well, and my family, and her family, and Hayden as well for helping me out in qualifying, because without him I probably would have been a lot worse.
Well, it's been a pleasure to have you join me in the interview this evening. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it didn't quite work out, but still, a win is going to come at some point. I'm sure of that. Perhaps it'll come at Algarve. We'll see you there. Until then, have a great rest of your evening.
Cheers, thank you, you too.
So hearing there, ladies and gentlemen, from a little bit of a downtrodden William Humphrey, it's understandable, to be fair. If you put yourself in his shoes, I think right now he thought he'd had it done in race number 2. And in race 1, he enjoyed the battling, but I think he wanted a little bit more. And I think race number 1, for both of the drivers we've interviewed so far, really has been one of those races where there was loads of great fighting, but it just wasn't the race they were hoping for, perhaps. And both of them also having difficulty in qualifying, whereby and qualifying's not that important at Daytona, but still, the importance of it that was there, well, it definitely undermined where they started relative to where they wanted to finish. And that is to take a win, of course. But in race number 2, well, we saw William Humphrey make some quick progress, enjoyed battling with the McLarens in particular, and also the Ford Mustang and Mark Hutchinson, which we can see here on screen right now. But in the end, he timed everything the way he wanted it to coming through the final lap. He was exactly where he wanted to be, but just a little bit of contact off of the back of what was Tomlinson-Dennis's Mercedes in the end, just scuppered his ability to build up that overspeed and take the win. And instead, it was 2 thousandths at the line, or 8 thousandths, one of the two, which was where he finished in second place. But still, for William Humphrey, he's got to see the positives from this. When we head to Algarve, if he can get to grips with the Aston Martin, both the dry and the wet, a first win of the season may just come to him yet. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we've got one more interview to come. Who is it going to be with? We're about to find out. And so for our final interview of this evening, ladies and gentlemen, joining me now in the interview room is none other than Hayden Miller, who is our back-to-back elite podium finisher today. Hayden, good evening to you, and what a strong showing from yourself today for Vulcan Motorsports. Not quite wins, but 2 third places, a good haul of points?
Really happy with tonight's performance on both races, considering last week in both Thursday and Sundays weren't the best show I've ever been in. But yeah, really happy with Daytona, putting in a lot of prep obviously this week and last week for not just this but also the big 24 coming up. So yeah, can't complain with the points I've gotten today.
Well, no complaints, but talking a little bit about the day in detail, qualifying, we did see yourself and the Vulcan Motorsports team really try to work a way to get all 4 cars together and in the slipstream. It didn't look as though it quite worked out the way you wanted it to, however.
It's very tight field, cars everywhere. We originally managed to make it work with me, Benedictas and Tseard, and then we seen Lewis was just driving about by himself, so we all reset back to the pits, new fuel, loads, fresh tires, all went out at four of us together, tried to get that final slipstream with the team, and we think it would have worked, but we were trying to get rid of William Humphreys that was trying to tag along behind us. So it's just we were trying to get the times out, but at the same time we didn't really want, as a team, another competitor being with us gaining the slipstream at the same time. But yeah, it was Daytona Open qualifying. If you haven't got a slipstream, you're pretty much going to be below P10 always. I think I helped William get out of that barrier by giving him a draft earlier on in the session. But yeah, it's that one plan worked, the second attempt didn't really work out that well.
Well, it may not have worked out exactly as you wanted it in qualifying, but in the race, we definitely saw you make some good progress, and it got very feisty in that top 10 pack all the way through. How did you find it in the end, and did you feel that the third place you'd earned was representative of where you were in that pack, or was there still the win there?
Race 1 was pretty much just get through the pack. I was very lucky there was the 3 cars that spun in front of me into turn 1, so it was just about catching the other however many there was in front of me, but I think I was just out of range in the slipstream all race, so couldn't really do much there. Race 2, I knew it was a reverse grid, which previously had worked out for me quite well in season 9 of ESR. But yeah, it was just I seen all the battling, and I'm like, I'm going to be catching these guys no matter what. I think I drove a lot more aggressively in race 2 than race 1. I was pushing the car more. I had a better feel of the car. I think I made a setup change as well with the in-car adjustments mid-race, which helped a lot with traction. But yeah, I just knew I was confident on the brakes. These guys were probably getting a bit cautious because of the track temp. I still had my moments with the rear end, but that's just the vet being the vet on these hot temps. Yeah, just had to push through that, forget about everyone behind me, and just keep on putting it down the inside of corners, which for that race was the second hairpin on the infield. Just move lap after lap. It was going beautifully until I got to about P3, and I seen the top 2 were scrapping, so I was like, I need to catch these guys. I need to get past the Mustang and the McLaren in front of me. So I got past them. By then there was already 2-second gap. So I was like, I'll take P3. I'm definitely not going to be unhappy about P3 in this strength. But yeah, after I seen they were getting a bit feisty with each other, nudging each other, getting really aggressive, I thought P1 or P2 was on the cards, but at the end of the day it wasn't. But yeah.
Well, indeed, I appreciate you giving us the synopsis of both races there in good stead. And like you say, in the end, really having to settle for third for race number 2, as much as it was a third place in race 1. But now that we've got the slipstream around, definitely done and dusted, is it upwards from here from yourself? Because at the Sachsenring, you were a bit far back. Didn't quite work out there as much as perhaps you would have liked. Here today, it's been a double podium. So at the Algarve, can we expect you to be not just on the podium, but perhaps in the hands of victory?
We'll see. I'd say I'm fast in the wet, but I'm definitely not the most confident. I'll see what setup I can make or get worked out for the wet, because I believe it's wet in Algarve. But yeah, it's a fun track. I've got some experience on that track. It's not a brand new track, unlike Sachsenring. Yeah, we'll see how it goes, but you never know until you rock up onto the grid.
All fair play indeed. Anything can happen in motorsport, and it normally does, but we wish you the best of luck with your preparations for the next round. But just before we let you go, Hayden, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast?
Yeah, just a big shout out to all the banter going on, and the help and the advice, and the overall good team spirit in Vulcan Motorsports. I think I found a really good team here, so hopefully there's more to come with that team.
Oh, fantastic. Well, glad to hear you're happy with the Vulcan Motorsports team, Hayden. Indeed, I'm sure they're enjoying having you as part of the outfit, and your results are definitely reflecting that so far this season. But with that, we'll leave it there, and thank you for your time this evening. Well done the double podium, and we'll see you at Algarve to see whether you can go one step further to the top. Until then, all the best.
Thank you. See you.
So here and there, ladies and gentlemen, from Hayden Miller, who's really able to give a perspective on the racing today. Happy with his performance, although a bit gutted that qualifying worked out for the first instance where the team at Vulcan Motorsports were able to group up and give each other the tow, but not the second instant. They didn't want to, as Hayden admitted there, they didn't want to give the tow to William Humphrey and help out a close competitor. So in the end, it really was a qualifying that was slightly compromised for the 181 Corvette. However, Miller definitely tried to move forward as quickly as possible in race 1 and did so, and in the end enjoyed that third place finish. In race number 2, it was much the same, albeit of course he had to come through having started all the way back in 12th place. But he found himself towards the end of the race watching the fighting going on between Humphrey and Tomlinson-Dennis, and realising that whilst they were fighting hard, he wasn't quite able to get close enough. So third place was really the best he could achieve, but it was an absolutely solid effort from Miller. And indeed, it's really started to bring forward now this season, where in learning the Sachsenring last week, it was a brand new circuit. Here, it's been pretty straightforward, and when they head to Algarve, indeed all of our drivers head to Algarve, you imagine Hayden is going to be feeling just that little bit more comfortable, and indeed the results may continue to come. Indeed, we look forward to seeing whether he can be putting himself in P1. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, well, we'll have to leave it there for interviews. And a huge thank you to all of our interviewees this evening. But you know what? Let's recap who we had in the interview room tonight. So we had 3 interviews from the elite class today. Indeed, I think our pro driver's a little bit shy. We may have to see if we can wrangle a few of them in into the interview room as of next time. But we heard firstly from Milton Tomlinson-Dennis, the World of Racing STR esports driver, your winner in race number 2 after a bit of a frustrating end to his race number 1. But we then heard from William Humphrey for Vulcan Fasters by Glass Tech Racing, and well, a little bit dejected with the way things are played out, but the flip side of the coin was some big points, and it does mean that he may just be your championship leader going into the next round, or if not, he's definitely going to be inside the top 3 with the way his season is going so far. Then we heard lastly from Hayden Miller, and well, a double podium for him, 3rd in both racing elite class, and the Vulcan Motorsports driver keeping a consistent haul of points in his back pocket, and that could prove valuable as the season goes along. Thank you to all 3 of our drivers for joining me in the interview. We look forward to plenty more at what is the Algarve in a week's time. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show, and perhaps you're sat there right now wanting to know more about the SimRacing International community and how you can get on the grid and join in all the fun on a weekly basis and compete for glory and trophies, well, for all that and more, we definitely recommend you join our official Discord. Link available at the bottom of the screen, and you won't find a more burgeoning and growing and friendly SimRacing community which operates out of the United Kingdom, but open to everybody around the world. It doesn't matter where you race from. Use that Discord link and you may be able to get on the grid and join in one of the following series. Our GT3 series, which you've been tuning into today, the official SimRacing International series that runs on Thursdays. And indeed, we are into our 11th season with 120 drivers across our 2 splits. We also do have fun for GT3 drivers on Sundays in the UK SimRacing Community Rendition. Season 17 of that has recently got underway, and you can catch each and every week of the racing there with broadcasts on our YouTube channel. Alternatively, if you want to take a trip back in time to 2023, you can of course join the grid for our official GTE series. Its first season is currently underway, and that runs on Friday evenings, and we do head to Road America tomorrow night for round number 3 of that. But if you want something a bit more casual and free to join, we do of course have our official Practice League, which does run on Tuesdays, Wednesdays and Saturdays. So indeed, there's been plenty of opportunities in the past to get on the grid at SimRacing International, and there's plenty of opportunities in the present and coming in the future, and there's never been a better time to be part of the community. But we'd also like to take a moment to say a big thank you to our series and league sponsors, who do include, of course, Carmate More Than Technology, the GP2 Group, and lastly, a huge thank you to Motorsport UK's esports division for continuing to recognise us here at SimRacing International as a recommended community. We're very grateful for that recognition, and long may it continue. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we now turn our attentions to next time. And next time out in round number 3, we'll set your clocks for Thursday the 22nd of January 2026, because we will be back to our 60-minute feature race, and it will be at the Autodromo International du Algarve, or known in short as the Portimao circuit. There, with its old school feel, with its undulations and sweeping bends, our drivers may not just have to contend with a wide open racing surface that opens plenty of overtaking opportunities, but also with mixed conditions abound, they may just also have to deal with a spot of rain. But who in Portugal will continue to lead the way as our elite and pro classes continue to be shuffled up? Well, we'll find out then. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, you have been tuning in to the SimRacing International GT3 Championship on Thursdays. I've been your host, Paul Walsh, and until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly from all of us here in Split A, remember, like our drivers, to stay on track. Good night.